Welcome back to this channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto, Sasuke and Hinata had nothing left to lose. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Iruka nervously straightened his Chunin vest. What was the reason behind the Hokage's sudden visit? That was never a particularly fun business. It was likely doubly unpleasant because he had brought up the Hyuga. He held up his hand to knock, but something stopped him. Come on in, Iruka. The Chunin gave a headshake. There were days when it felt like the professor knew everything, or was very close to it. He entered. Hokage. Sama. Hello again, Iruka. I'm sorry to tell you that this year's Genin teams have been rearranged yet again. Iruka gave a noticeable wince. Hokage. Sama, I don't mean to be rude, but this is the third time we've had this conversation and I don't think the Junin sensei will be very pleased. Faye, I'm at the top of the food chain. What are they going to do about it? Now, down to business. Do you recall the Kumo incident from 8 years ago? It wasn't difficult to remember the war the Hyuga nearly started after discovering their heir had been abducted. Most people still didn't know what had happened to the girl. Something about Iruka's nagging suspicion was about to change. When the Hokage said, the Hyuga girl was recently rediscovered, he did so deeply. Bingo. Am I doing well? That's wonderful, Iruka grinned. Abruptly, it fell from his face. But, is she alright? Iruka's empathy for children, even those he didn't know well, had always been strong. Sarutobi could tell by the expression on her face that her story was not a happy one. A Junin found her curled up inside a self, made whole in a pouring rain. She had clear signs of physical torture and perhaps scientific experimentation when examined by our medic.nin. However, she is polite to fault if quiet and mostly keeps to herself. Not to mention her ninja skills are very well rounded. How that happened is still a mystery, but I need to put her on a team. If I may be so forward, yes, I will explain why. This girl has already experienced too much in her life, as anyone can tell just by looking at her. The main family of the Hyuga has rejected her because she may have been exposed to the Byakugan's secrets while she was living in Kumogakure. Making her live a normal life like a regular citizen will only lead to failure, possibly tragedy, and she may literally go insane if forced to live a quiet life. If we don't allow her to be a ninja, what else can she be? Sarutobi said with a smile that was almost bittersweet. She is a shinobi. I'll now demonstrate the new team structure for you. There was a brief pause while Iruka went over the lists once more. Hokage. Sama, it could be fatal to saddle such instructors with those genin. The village might lose Junin and 3 potentially valuable assets. Additionally, they're still children. Iruka, I am the Hokage. His voice took on a tone of authority as he said, I have decided what I believe to be the best. Do you want to contest the decision? Iruka sighed resignedly and closed his eyes. No, Hokage. Sama. Absolutely not. Sarutobi grinned and said, I will let the sensei know about this change. I'm grateful. That's all. Naruto Uzumaki was bored. He used to play a lot of tricks on Iruka and his other Chunin teachers, but it quickly turned out to be a waste of time because it was just too simple, so simple that it had become very boring. Instead, he spent his class periods talking to the one thing that didn't seem to waste his time in the back of his mind. Q. Chan. Yo. Worm of Death. Yes, Naruto was aware that the Kyuubi had been sealed inside of him, and he was aware that this was the reason his Chunin instructors had failed him twice in a row, but this time he had tried and succeeded. Now, did you really pass Dobi? Iruka started reading off the teams, and Naruto ignored his Uchiha rival and went to sit down, knowing that he would not have to see that bastard again once they were placed on teams and that he could easily defeat Sasuke if he revealed his abilities. The blonde settled in, knowing that midnight training sessions with the Kyuubi could do that to a person. Team 3, Akemi, Benjiro, and Emihiro. Junin instructor. Mitsuomi Daisuke. Team 6, Chiasa, Rondo, and Mikomi. Junin instructor. Otukuyuki. Team 8, Kiba, Sakura, and Shino. Junin instructor. Yuhi Kurenai. Team 10, Shikamaru, Choji, and Ino. Iruka controlled his temper as the blonde girl screamed her displeasure. Junin instructor. Sarutobi Isuma. This year's teams will be those. To get his attention, one girl held up her hand and waved it back and forth. Pardon me, Iruka. Sensei. Sakura, I know very well that Sasuke's name was not called, he sighed. I was going to invite him and Naruto to approach my desk. Sakura appeared ashamed as both boys obeyed. Naruto had a suspicion that he would not like what he was told, and since he and Sasuke were the only two individuals left without a team, their chances of being on the same team were not good. You too. Iruka led them out of the room and down the hallway to a classroom that would not be used until later that day. She slid the door open and beckoned them inside. Come with me, please. A girl sat on a desk, waiting for them in silence, her hands folded neatly and covered by black gloves. She wore a silver, gray sleeveless robe that reached to her hips, black pants to just below her knees, and a black shirt to her elbows, with a mesh shirt visible underneath. She had identical, heavy, looking cuter bracelets on all of her wrists and ankles, a holster was tied to her right leg, and a belt around her waist was obviously designed to hold scrolls, but her face was the most striking feature, one half flawless, pale, and smooth, with a lock of dark indigo hair framed by an oversized black eye patch. The two boys began when she opened her eye. The girl must be a Hyuga, and if I'm not mistaken, that would be the Byakugan. However, no Hyuga our age exist unless she's the kidnapped person from years ago. Naruto waited for something more during the brief silence, something like, she seems weak, or, the gene pool of your generation ain't looking so good, but nothing materialized. That's it? No snarky remarks? Her aura is intriguing. For the time being, Naruto ignored the demon and grinned ominously at the girl while flashing his teeth. Hiya. The name is Uzumaki Naruto. Don't use it too often. Uchiha Sasuke. She gave them both a nod without saying anything. Naruto objected right away. This is Hinata, boys, Iruka said, smiling kindly at the girl. She'll be the third member of your team. Sasuke and I are teammates. You must be kidding me, Iruka, sensei. Finally displaying some interest, Sasuke said, I have to object, Iruka, sensei, adding, we don't even know her, and it doesn't seem like she had to pass any examinations to get here. Why Naruto, too? He didn't appear particularly happy, but then, he didn't seem happy about much. Other than shifting her single eye to rest on Sasuke, the girl did nothing. Sasuke, I can guarantee you that the Hokage is skilled at his job. She wouldn't be here if he believed she would put you or your team at a disadvantage. Regarding why Naruto, the best and worst students are typically paired with each other to maintain proper team balance. Right now, it's time to return to the classroom, the Chunin said, attempting to defuse the tense situation. You must wait for your sensei of Junin. Neither boy considered asking their sensei's name. Anko put his signature. You know of Orochimaru's wish to gain immortality. She gave a little snort. Yes, sir. His plan is to obtain Uchiha in an effort to replicate every jutsu in existence. He will most likely be going for our own Avenger because one is obviously out of his league. She really didn't like the direction this was taking. Sir? Please give him and his genin team some advice. Kakashi and you will teach together. I don't mean to offend, Hokage Sama, but are you going crazy? You do know who I am, don't you, sir? Anko Midarashi? Crazy woman? I know who they are, of course. That is why I am asking you. The only person who knows enough about Sasuke to be ready for his pursuit is him. Is me. I understand, sir. 3 brats, including that cocky Uchiha brat. Brat. She shuddered. Life was awful. What would happen to her? Babysitter Midarashi Anko, Sasuke, Hinata, and Naruto waited for their teacher with patience. After 3 hours, or as patiently as one could wait, the 3 of them were enveloped in a clumsy silence, and Hinata, deciding to budget her time, watched her 2 new teammates. The proud Uchiha had the all-consuming fire of revenge in his eyes, a burning need to kill someone, and he would get into trouble unless someone kept a close eye on him. She could see that both were troubled people, and she could relate to that. The other boy, the blonde, was a mystery to her. She could tell he was concealing something, and his demeanor was as shady as the Uchihas. However, despite his dark attire, a dark red jumpsuit with black and orange details and a black shirt underneath, his bright blue eyes were very open to her, and he had a bestial, bewhiskered face and a forebodingly cynical attitude. He was determined to do something, she was certain, and he wanted respect. That made sense to her. Back home. That place is not your home, Hinata told her ruthlessly. That place means only death, that place means they will use you. It was so different from the place where she had lived before, where the clouds were always present, obstructing any hope. But was this place any better, or was it worse, even more evil, a subtler malevolence? This village, where the sun was always shining brightly, people looked you in the eye as you passed and perhaps said hello, and everyone was so cheerful and happy, as if unaware of life's greater evils. Look, when she first arrived, they had told her, This is your home. Look, see these people? They have your eyes. Your family. Look at this school. You'll be a ninja when you grow up, okay? And trust. You have to trust these people with your life. You can trust us. We're the good guys. Family? What kind of family would reject her for something she couldn't control and hadn't particularly enjoyed, for that matter? That was no family. Even a girl who had never really known a family could tell that. As for the team, well, she'd have to wait and see. In her experience, trusting people only resulted in being treated like an object, painful betrayal, or someone's death. When the door slid open, her mind jolted to attention, but to her dismay, there were two people instead of one, and they were both engaged in a furious argument behind closed doors. Because she had excellent hearing, she managed to hear some of their conversation. Remind me that we're sharing, so tell me what I should do with him. Bullshit, and you know it, his chakra is completely unpredictable. Naturally favor him, we both know it, that's just one of the reasons I'm here. Wildcard, we don't really know her abilities, so we can't push her too hard. Both of them looked at each other after a few more protracted arguments, one with rage and the other with deadpan irritation. They all mumbled, fine, and the woman in the trench coat, mesh suit, and miniskirt cleared her throat before speaking. Greetings and welcome to the vast world of ninjahood, Genin Team Alpha. I'm Mitarashi Anko, and I'll be teaching you Junin along with this moron here. Have any inquiries? Naruto said, who's the fool? The man in the mask said, my name is Hatake Kakashi. Please meet us on the roof for a more thorough briefing. Once more, the atmosphere was uneasy. Anko was tapping her foot in frustration, and Naruto started to appear restless, but Kakashi, Sasuke, and Hinata appeared unaffected. I believe we would benefit from introductions. The shrimpy one, Blondie, you go first, Anko said abruptly, saying, tell us about your likes, dislikes, dreams, and stuff like that. He frowned at her for the moniker, saying, my name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I will be the greatest Hokage ever someday. He grinned and said, I like ramen, so it's more of an eventuality than a dream. I'm a huge fan of ramen, especially when it's prepared by Tuchi-san from Ichiraku. I also enjoy strengthening myself through training. Sasuke and other bastards here think they're hot shit, and I don't like how long cup ramen takes to cook. The reason I don't have any dreams is that they will all eventually come true. Eventualities, I said. Hinata was spot on with that one. Being the strongest ninja in the village was the only thing that could earn one more respect. All right, pretty boy, now it's your turn. Uchiha Sasuke is my name. I dislike a lot of things, but I don't like many. My goal is to murder a specific man. Once more, exactly on point. Hinata was happy she had learned that particular skill. If you knew what to look for, people could be easy to read. They all listened intently as the enigmatic girl, who had not yet opened her mouth, said, come on girl. Her voice was so melodious and soft that even the two Junin had to strain to hear her say, I am Hinata. I enjoy having freedom. I don't like those who question that freedom. Actually, I don't have any dreams. Freedom. What happened to this girl? Kakashi thought that was a pretty broad term. My name is already familiar to you. It's really none of your business what I like or don't like. In addition, I don't want to tell you about my dreams. The name is Anko, and that's all there is to it. No sensei. I hate cunning assholes who don't care about their village or a basic moral code, but I love dango and kicking butt. My dream? Well, I don't really care for dreaming. It's all mushy nonsense. But anyhow. So, let's get to the specifics, shall we? As you have already guessed, Team Alpha is a special group. Normally, there would be another test to determine whether you are prepared for the real world, but the Hokage had decided it was best that you all three stay out of the academy. Alright. We will meet once more tomorrow at 7 o'clock on Training Ground 13. Do you hear me, Kakashi? That's precisely 7 in the morning. Well done, off with you now. Silently, Hinata made her way to the tiny apartment, like home the Hokage had prepared for her. Don't worry too much, even though I know your family has complained about your presence. 2 other members of your graduating class are already living alone. I understand that you prefer privacy, so it's not that bad. That she did. She was aware that she would feel uncomfortable even if the Hyuga had embraced her with open arms. Hinata had been hypersensitive to being watched since she could remember, and those eyes could see her every move. Anyhow, the house was a good size, fully furnished, and it was definitely not a bad arrangement for her. Her sensei seemed okay. They were competent at the very least, and she could tell they were both strong ninja. Naruto was also pretty cute. The whole family reunion thing had been a bust. Oh well. The idea of a team might actually work out. Her teammates were strong and would challenge her to be stronger. Hinata was looking forward to tomorrow for the first time in a long time as she lay down to sleep, a tiny smile curling her lips. Naruto became alarmed upon realizing that he was only just waking up at 5 minutes before 7 o'clock. That Anko chick is going to eat me, and I'm going to be late. Even though that sounds delicious, it's unfortunate that no human in this village could be that cruel. Haha, have a good laugh, fuzzball. He wasn't sure how late he needed to be punished by her, but based on the way she'd looked at Kakashi when she specifically laid out a time for them to meet, he didn't want to know. Ever. To his delight, Anko wasn't even present when he arrived, but Hinata and Sasuke were. When neither Anko nor Kakashi appeared for another half hour, his joy quickly gave way to frustration, and Sasuke appeared equally irritated, albeit more covertly. Before Naruto could begin yelling profanities, something suddenly jumped out of nowhere. Hi, young Pupilages. Naruto abruptly fell to the ground, saying, "What the?" Naruto found himself unable to concentrate as he saw what could only be described as a tragic sight. Bright green spandex bodysuits should be taken into consideration in any situation. The hairstyle, the outfit, the eyebrows, the sparkling teeth, the eyebrows. I see that Kakashi, my stylish rival, has adopted you. I'm made a guy, so don't be afraid. Ting. The sun shone on his broad, white smile. Sasuke appeared incredulous. Is this thing a ninja? Hinata's lips began to twitch involuntarily. He's funny. And who are you three young people? Still feeling overpowered, Naruto responded. Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke, and Hinata, pointing to each of them individually. Fantastic. Tenten, Rock Lee, and Hyuga Neji are my own fervent young hatchlings. Hinata's smile instantly curled up and died. Rock Lee looked exactly like the strange Junin in front of her, and Tenten appeared to be a decent enough person, but Hyuga Neji was conceited, confident in his abilities and his background, and he was staring at her. Or was that just his natural expression? Hinata couldn't tell. And he looked familiar. Don't hide behind me, Hinata, the tall man said sharply in a whisper. Look at your cousin. Neji gave them a nod, his upper lip curled in disdain, and Naruto and Sasuke instantly glared back, acutely aware of his demeanor and his feelings toward them specifically. Your sensei is where? Astonished by his rival's absence, Guy questioned them. Kakashi has tried to discredit the amazing young people of Konoha once more. Little Genin, don't worry. We'll still turn you into a skilled ninja. Both of Hinata's teammates turned their frowns to Guy. Little Genin. Capable ninja. Let's enjoy a snack. In order for us, the older, more seasoned ninja, to assess your abilities, we will have small practice matches. Guy affectionately tousled Sasuke's hair and said, "Oh, the youth of spring." Team Alpha fell back, uncertain, as Guy pulled his team aside and started to explain the exercises they would be doing with the rookie Genin. The green-clad man missed the death glare completely, but they assumed that must be normal since Neji was on his team and that didn't affect him at all. Naruto had a pouting expression on his face. You must be joking, this man is an absolute idiot. Sasuke had developed a deeper glower than usual, not to mention he insinuated at our ineptitude. Since his own team is outside of the academy and has real-world experience in the field, I guess his ideas make sense. He thinks our abilities must be inferior to theirs. Hinata raised an eyebrow, but the boys were staring at her for reasons other than the fact that it was probably the longest sentence she would say all day. Are you able to disprove them? The tension vanished in an instant. Naruto smiled. Well, when you put it that way, Sasuke versus Tenten was the first matchup, and it was a close one. Tenten was initially hesitant to give her younger peer her all, but once she realized that he was a very skilled younger peer, it was too late and Sasuke had the advantage. It ended shortly after that when Sasuke's taijutsu got inside her cocoon of sharp objects and delivered a powerful blow to her stomach. Guy declared it a tie because, despite Tenten's unconsciousness, Sasuke was pinned to a tree by a series of kunai, shuriken, and senbon, her last-ditch reflex effort. Naruto and Lee were next to go, and Naruto lost, if only because Lee was faster than Naruto. The blonde was actually pretty fast, but he was mediocre in comparison to Lee. Hinata suspected that he was hiding something because he must have felt it was foolish to reveal his true abilities to such unorthodox people. Hinata's eye narrowed calculatingly, and she had suspected that she would have to fight Neji, who not only looked at her as if he were eager to fight, but had likely been asked by the Hyuga clan to determine whether she was still useful or if they should just give up. Tenten had told her during the Naruto fight after he had been revived that Neji was the greatest genius the Hyuga had seen in 100 years, that he had learned Juken moves and attacks that only members of the main house should know, and that his belief in the unfairness of the main house branch house system was what drove him to prove himself superior. Other than that, his life appeared to be fairly normal. Both parents were still alive, they were very supportive of him and his actions, and he was the heir to the branch house. Hinata considered this to be a good deal when she thought about her life and what she had witnessed of others, but then she realized how restricted the branch house members were. It was like being in a cage, but they could never, ever leave. Tenten whispered to Hinata, "Neji calls the branch caged birds," and she surreptitiously looked around to ensure that Neji was fully engaged in his furious spar with Sasuke. They are basically owned by the main house. When to eat, when to sleep, when to fight, and how to fight were all decisions they made. Neji drew lead. "So, Hinata, Sama, we meet again." This title surprised her. Her? A lady? I implore you to forgive me? Still as incompetent as ever, I see, he grinned. The Hyuga were known for their taijutsu, so Neji would know his basic forms inside and out. Hinata purposefully held her stance badly in order to draw him into a trap of indolence that she knew he couldn't escape. By purposefully creating weaknesses in her fighting style, she was able to effectively control his actions. Even when Hinata managed to stumble, accidentally, away from an attack, a portion of it usually got her. Ultimately, Neji abandoned the pretense of gauging her abilities and attacked her, launching strike after invisible strike to areas that would easily incapacitate her. This was because she failed to account for the chakra-based attacks that came with the Juken style, which he could easily pinpoint with veins flaring around his eyes. Neji deactivated his Byakugan and strode over to her with the arrogant expression she had come to detest in a matter of minutes after she landed face down after taking one last blow. As I had suspected, Kumo was able to capture you because you were weak enough. Without the Juken to help you, you were even more helpless. What a waste of time this exercise is. Sasuke turned away, uninterested, his fantasies of the girl as an unknown and possibly capable teammate dashed. She certainly exuded a mysterious and seemingly powerful presence, but clearly, real life couldn't match whatever he had imagined. HMPH. Another Naruto. But Naruto, who understood how humiliating and degrading it was to lose, especially in front of a crowd, felt strangely supportive of the fallen girl and silently encouraged her, saying, "Get up, Hinata. Chan. You can still do it. I don't think my findings will come as a huge surprise to Heishi. Sama, you never demonstrated much." Wham! It was his turn to fly, a caged bird, Neji-san, across the clearing and crash into a tree without fanfare, but before he could fall to the ground, unconscious, a few senbons suddenly whizzed by to pin him there by the collar of his shirt as though for scientific study. Hinata jumped up, throwing a punching, kicking combo to his stomach that even Lee had trouble following. She twirled gracefully before slamming the heel of her foot viciously into his cheek. Then there was silence. "No freakin' way," Tenten yelled, "you defeated Neji." Hinata shrugged and turned to face her uninterestedly. "Hinata-san," Lee roared abruptly, "it's obvious that you have defeated my rebirth with the help of your diligent work and your fervent youth. That's why I would never want to be a genius," she told him, her lips quivering once more in her nearly smile. "Because once somebody beats me at what I am best at, there's only one place for me to go." Naruto smirked and said, "Down," as he was starting to like this girl. She nodded at him. "It's almost advantageous to be weak. You learn how to get back up after falling a lot. Being a genius and being surrounded by people who are just like you is not a good way to train. It's a bad way to learn and to be a ninja." Hinata appeared to be thinking deeply, as though considering a personal experience, and she appeared to be speaking aloud rather than addressing any of them. However, Hinata-san is a different kind of genius, a genius of hard work, like Lee here, remarked Guy arrogantly. "You have truly honored me, Guy Sensei." With tears streaming down his cheeks, Lee spoke. "Lee, you really deserve this kind of recognition." They started sobbing uncontrollably as they gave each other hugs. "Guy Sensei, Lee, Guy Sensei, Lee." Hinata gave them a strange look and said, "Are they always that way?" In response, Tenten said, "Yeah, pretty much." "How do you take part in missions? Speak with other groups? Ignore them? Generally operate as a single, dependable unit? It requires a great deal of practice?" "Oh, that was fantastic, Hinata-san." Naruto smiled and gave her a nod, which was his way of congratulating her. She blushed a little because she was much more easily insulted than praised, so this was a bit much. Thank you. How did you do it? I heard that Neji was the top student in his class last year, the blonde inquired with excitement. I have no doubts his power is greater than mine, she said, adding that he could have won if he hadn't underestimated me. He failed because of his conceit. Hinata-san, I must ask you how you were able to overcome the Jukin attacks. Guy had suddenly leapt out of nowhere, landing in front of her in a pounce. Like motion before suddenly straightening up. His expression suddenly became serious. I have very good control over my chakra system, Hinata stated. Chakra-based attacks like those I can shake off with a simple meditative exercise. She paused before continuing. My chakra coils are very different than most people's. Instead of pressing her further, he decided to smile at all three of the new genin, his teeth glimmering. All right, after that, we'll keep stoking your youth's flames. Under Maida Guy's watchful eye, they had spent the remainder of the day practicing, pushing themselves, and generally exhausting themselves. Although the man was eccentric, he was also a great teacher, swiftly identifying the shortcomings in each of their taijutsu styles and offering advice on how to integrate ninjutsu and genjutsu into the fighting disciplines they preferred. However, Team Alpha was currently engaged in another activity. They didn't even arrive. What kind of Junin are they? Naruto exclaimed, extending his sore muscles. HN, was Sasuke's elegant response. Hinata said, there must have been some reason, after occasionally looking around with her eyes narrowed in perplexity. Hinata-san, what's wrong? Naruto, who had observed her strange behavior, which had gotten worse since earlier that day, asked inquisitively. Just shaking her head, she uttered the words, they did it on purpose. What? Impossible, exclaimed Sasuke. They would have more time to assess us if we were put to the test by an unidentified teacher. We wouldn't hold back as much because they weren't the ones putting us to the test, reasoning that our Junin sensei wouldn't be judging us anyhow. She concluded solemnly, I just realized that they've been watching us the entire time. Sensei. Kakashi, Anko, are you out there? Present yourselves. A vein on Sasuke's forehead twitched dangerously as Hinata smiled ghostly and turned her head away to conceal her laughter. Dobi, I don't think that. Anko appeared out of nowhere and said, well done for working out the point of our absence, Hinata-chan. Kakashi then materialized behind Sasuke and placed a hand on his shoulder. All three of you have displayed excellent skills, but not without some flaws, he said. What about you, sucks? So that's what we'll work on, Anko said. Tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Kakashi and I will be present when we meet here once more. Good night, children. Due to the high profile status of all three members, and their sensei, the following week was spent brutally training the three aspiring ninja with almost ferocious intensity, essentially conditioning Sasuke and Naruto not to tear each other apart at every opportunity after Kakashi had arrived an hour or two late and Anko had given him the necessary, and shouted, reprimand. Despite Naruto's academy scores and Hinata's absence from the village, both of their teachers recognized that they were three exceptionally talented genin. In fact, it was quite a mystery how she managed to acquire all the skills necessary for a ninja in Cloud's captivity. Only a group of fools would teach their prisoners how to kill themselves, and a large portion of her story remained unknown. Soon after, Team Alpha was waiting once more on the bridge close to Training Area 13. Sasuke was leaning against the opposite side in his distant manner, and Hinata was sitting on the railing with her legs folded like a pretzel. Naruto, who was out of breath and flushed, emerged from a nearby tree. Is Anko here yet? He frantically asked, and when Hinata shook her head, he grinned with relief. Grateful to the authorities. If I'm late, I'm afraid she'll get mad at me. I'm not sure about skinning, though. For a special case like you, Shrimp, that seems way too short. With his face flushed, Naruto whirled around and said, hey there, Mitarashi-sama. Good, good, I see you're finally learning your manners, she said with a sly smile. Kakashi and I have now chosen a particular kind of training for today. Given that your year's other two graduating teams are eager to see how you develop. Oh no, it's not going to be another sparring day. Naruto complained, his face sagging, as if he had regained his backbone. Wasn't battling fuzzy brows enough to torment him for 10 or so years? Stop whining. It irritates me. In addition, are you incapable of putting up with a few of the punks from your graduating class? They have been training together for a whole year, whereas your classmates have only had a week or so none of them will even come close to matching Guy's team's level. Anyway, as I was saying, the other two teams are interested to see how you're coming along, and their Junin sensei, Sarutobi Asuma and Yuhi Kurenai, are especially eager to see how you function as a team and to meet Hinata. I don't know where Kakashi is, she appeared very unhappy. But the point of today's exercise is to show us how you work as a team as opposed to alone. You know, if your abilities mesh well enough already, your general attitude toward each other and such. Hinata whispered, we've only been a team for a few days, Anko-san, while Naruto and Sasuke exchanged glares more appropriate for adversaries than for teammates. I don't think this will be an accurate gauge of our abilities. 7 days, said Anko. She turned away and began to walk, but paused once. It's going to show us how much work we need to get you to a point where your teamwork is flawless, as befitting any Konoha ninja. You better not let me down either, because I told Kurenai to expect a challenge. Oh, and if this turns into an ego trip, boys, training will be hell. Forever. Understand? Her voice was frightening enough, even though they couldn't see her face. Yes'm. HN. What was that, Sasuke? Yes. Good. Now let's go. Naruto and Sasuke were confronted by their former classmates a few minutes later. Neither was particularly happy. Naruto because he had never been popular in the academy. Sasuke because Sakura and Ino had instantly clung to his arm. What might have been different? Only a week had passed. Furthermore, Kiba was a prickly jerk. Hey Sasuke-kun, what do you think of my new bracelet? HN. Don't be stupid, forehead girl, it looks like you made it yourself out of animal hide. Plus, Sasuke-kun is totally entranced by my beautiful blue eyes, right, Sasuke-kun? HN. Kiba was grinning at him and said, Yo, Naruto. How's the whole team thing going? Not slowing anybody down, are you? Naruto gave him a stony look in return. Choosing to say, for once, Sakura has my pity instead of my disgust. His distaste for the girl with the pink hair was obvious. She had been his favorite target before he decided that playing pranks was too dull, and poor Shino. Kiba looked Hinata over and abruptly lost interest in their earlier argument, asking, the third member of your cell is a Hyuga? Both boys had been a little ahead of her. Everyone's attention was drawn to Team Alpha's Kunoichi after the Inuzuka's remark. A tall, brunette, female Junin sensei turned to Hinata and grinned. They moved forward to introduce themselves, saying, Hello. I'm Yuhi Kurenai, the Junin instructor of Team 8. He said, Hey, Inuzuka Kiba here, with a smile that bordered on flirtation. A girl with green eyes and pink hair came forward, and she didn't seem pleased to see the girl who had taken her. Sasuke. Her short statement, Haruno Sakura, was too snobbish for Naruto's taste. Aburame Shino. The tall, dark, and introverted boy was barely discernible behind his high, collared gray coat. I'm Sarutobi Isuma, Team 10's sensei, a bearded, gentle-looking man with a cigarette in his mouth said. My name is Yamanaka Ino, declared the blonde girl, who gave off an air of superiority. She also gave Hinata a snobbish look and said, These two idiots, Akamichi Choji and Nara Shikamaru, are my teammates. Anko said, and this is Hinata. The girl gave each of them a courteous bow. Now, to get down to business. I don't want to waste any time waiting for Kakashi, so let's just set something up right away, nay? The other Junin gave a nod. Any suggestions? Let's just go one. On dot one. On dot one first, Asuma stated. It'll be like a warm-up. Kurenai proposed. Why don't all the Kunoichi start? Anko shrugged after initially looking shocked. Well, if you insist, Kurenai's eyebrow went up. Nothing, said Anko naively. Send him in. The trio of young Kunoichi formed a triangle as they entered the center of Training Ground 13. Sakura and Ino looked at each other, communicating the same thing. This girl was the new danger. Ensure the threat is aware that Sasuke is prohibited. When Hinata saw the expression, she immediately concluded that the fight would be more of a 1-on-2 than a 1-on-1 encounter. When both girls hurried at her simultaneously, her suspicions were validated. However, they moved carelessly and immaturely. Hinata gave a small frown. For the past week, she had been training with Sasuke and Naruto, who were far more skilled. Compared to these two, they were bumbling fools. Thus, they are the best of the best. Why does Sasuke-san call Naruto-san dead last, I wonder? Without having to concentrate on the battle in front of her, her mind drifted in the same idle strain. It was almost pitifully simple. However, her thoughts started to selectively concentrate on Sakura and Ino's responses. She enjoyed Sakura's shocked expression when her punches were easily sidestepped. When her foot was swatted away like a bothersome fly, she enjoyed Ino's cries of annoyance. It was then that Hinata realized how disgusting the two girls were, squabbling ferociously for the attentions of a boy who didn't seem to care. These two seemed so incredibly shallow in light of everything she had seen and experienced. And they were the village's future fighting force. They had no idea how the outside world operated. A cunning thought seized her mind. Hinata dropped the bomb as the other two girls, still furious and sufficiently humiliated from their most recent fall, were getting up. You know, Haruno-san. I remember Uchiha-san saying something about how beautiful your eyes were. What? Screamed Ino. Impossible. Not so, Ino.pig, exclaimed Sakura with a sense of triumph. As you can see, love conquers all. Only if it's true love, billboard brow. How could Sasuke.kun truly love a girl that's more forehead than face? The dispute swiftly devolved into a brawl between the competitors. Hinata appeared bored as she sat on the sidelines. Kurenai yelled, "That's quite enough." In frustration, she turned to the sensei of Team 10. "Sakura, I said enough," she exclaimed. "Way to step in, Asuma. You want me to control Ino? You know so little, grasshopper." With Ino and Sakura still giving each other a fierce glare, Sakura, Ino, and Hinata made their way back toward the other members of the group. The threat had completely slipped their minds. "The way both of you behaved was absolutely childish," Kurenai replied. "Hinata is new to our village. What must she think now?" Kurenai's red-eyed gaze made both girls shudder. The two mumbled, "Sorry, Hinata-san," simultaneously. Hinata said, "I should apologize." Ino and Sakura gaped at her, believing she was mocking them, but there was a well-hidden anger in her voice that only her sensei and teammates could detect. "I gave you the impression that I cared. I really don't." She looked at Anko, who had a small smile on her face. "Do all kunoichi of Konoha conduct themselves in this way?" Hinata jumped a little when Kakashi put a soothing hand on her head and said, "Of course not, Hinata-chan. You certainly don't behave like that, now do you?" As he ruffled her bangs, all of her rage vanished into her wide-eyed gaze. "Kakashi," Kurenai uttered. Asuma acknowledged him with a nod. Anko wasn't so understanding. Her forehead veins twitched as she screamed, "Where the hell have you been? What part of 7 a.m. sharp is hard for you to understand?" "Well, I was walking on the road of life, liar." Anko and Naruto scowled and pointed at him. "A cheerful, and a poor old lady fell and broke her hip," was his response. "Naturally, I had to help her out. But anyway, why don't we just have the teams warm up with each other separately? That seems like a better idea." As they retreated to their corner to warm up, Naruto inquired, "What happened?" Beneath her smooth voice was resentment. "I mentioned you, Uchiha-san, and suddenly they couldn't seem to focus," Hinata said. "You have my commiseration." Naruto laughed. Sasuke frowned, appearing sullen. "Every day of the academy," he whispered beneath his breath. Before meeting again in the middle of the clearing, the teams warmed up for a few minutes. Kakashi examined the other two groups. When Sasuke and Naruto were willing to cooperate, they were both more talented than his team. Asuma's team, however, was unquestionably more of a recon team. None of them had the physical strength to even approach his own team. Their primary skill was espionage. However, Sakura's intelligence balanced out the strength in Kiba and the skill in Shino that Kurenai's team possessed. They ought to be the most difficult, Team 8 versus Team Alpha. Kakashi was unaware that it was also the most unstable team combination conceivable. Tension increased right away. The only person who didn't appear to have a personal agenda was Shino, followed by Naruto and Kiba, Sakura and Sasuke, Hinata and Sakura, and so on. Begin. The first to attack was Team 8, with Sakura for Hinata, Kiba for Naruto, and Shino for Sasuke all leaping at their opponents. Team Alpha remained motionless, anticipating the impending attack. Kurenai's team's focus on target separation was obviously more important than teamwork. Sakura's foot attempted to strike Hinata's midsection once more, but it was unsuccessful. She stepped forward, kicking and punching with ferocity. With unfocused eyes, Hinata blocked all of her attempts. She had obviously decided that her opponent was not worth her time. Sakura wasn't a moron. She had deduced that Sasuke had not actually spoken to Hinata. The mere thought caused her heart to race with adrenaline. She increased her speed, but Hinata kept up with her. "She's not receiving anything. I must enrage her enough for her to make a mistake." The girl with the pink hair teased, "What's the matter with that eye of yours? I thought all Hyuga liked to show off their dojutsu." In addition to Hinata, Sasuke and Naruto also paused, with the latter gazing at her with wide eyes. There was no sound at all. Sakura was starting to question whether this plan would succeed because, although it usually worked to slightly agitate Kiba in order to get him to make a mistake, this girl was much more difficult, would she? Team Alpha vanished abruptly into the treetops. Watching for any movement, Team 8 positioned themselves in a tight circle with their backs to the outside. The trio regrouped atop a towering oak tree. Naruto gave Hinata a hopeful glance. Well? She arched an eyebrow. He clarified, what are you gonna do? Who said I was going to do anything? Sasuke told her. The look you gave her could have frozen molten lava in a dry manner. Hinata remarked, more to herself than to either teammate, if she keeps taunting enemies like that, she will one day get herself killed. Not to mention that she is now a legal adult. She could at least act the part, right? The boys gave her a shrug. Whatever, Naruto uttered. Just make sure it goes through her thick skull. After giving it some thought, Hinata's eye brightened. This may benefit us both, Sasuke-san, she stated. Then by all means proceed. To his teammates, Kiba whispered, I found them. He tentatively sniffed the air. That oak, to the left of those elms. 3 dark blurs leapt away in unison before they could hit the tree with their volley of kunai. With Sasuke on his right and Hinata on his left, Naruto landed in the center, facing Sakura. She appeared taken aback, caught off guard by the fact that she opposed Sasuke. Kiba objected right away. Hey, don't you think that's a little UNF? His wrist was clipped by Naruto's kick, which he barely avoided. He scowled and leapt away, massaging the injured joint. Naruto declared stoically, the real world doesn't care about fair or not. This time, Hinata initiated contact with Shino, and Kiba leapt for him. Hinata's controlled and fluid kicks were avoided and blocked by the defensive bug user. Abruptly, she leapt away, taking Naruto's place against Kiba. Her flying kick made the Inuzuka duck. Meanwhile, Sakura was struggling to defeat Sasuke. Each time she made the decision to fight back, she would suddenly lose her courage. She detested the thought of doing Sasuke any harm. Remarkably, he did not exploit her hesitation. Instead, he merely put up with her assaults, avoiding them when needed. Fighting in a methodical, textbook style manner, Sakura found a rhythm that would have likely caused her to sustain serious injuries if she had been up against enemy ninja. Kurenai scowled. Though she had hoped to learn more about Hinata rather than the shortcomings of her own team, this match was undoubtedly educational. Sasuke and Hinata abruptly switched places, and Team Alpha underwent another change. Sakura was so focused on Sasuke leaving her that she failed to notice the intricate hand seals Hinata had started to form. It was already too late when she noticed the small kunoichi's hands on her wrists. Genpo. Choices yet to come, Sakura gave a blink. She was unable to see anything because everything was completely white. Then she suddenly found herself right in the center of the training field. She was the target of intense stares from Shino, Naruto, and Hinata. Without knowing why, the thought immediately came to her. Where is Kiba? To her left, she heard a scream of agony. An enemy, a young man with glasses and gray hair, had Kiba in his grasp. As a blue aura enveloped his hand, he stabbed Kiba in the ankle with a repulsive little smirk on his face. As the Inuzuka writhed and moaned in agony, he smiled savagely. Shocked, Sakura turned to see what Naruto, Shino, and Hinata were up to. They just stood there and stared at her. She became enraged. What are you doing? Don't you see what that man is doing to my teammate? All they could do was gaze. She squatted frantically, ready to charge into the battle and rescue Kiba. Dog boy, I'm on my way. She was about to launch herself into the air when she felt a tug on her head, which caused her to crash painfully into the ground. Oh no. What the? She reached for her hair, which, much to her dismay, had grown exponentially. It must be caught on something, she informed herself. She turned and followed the hair trail with her gaze. Black and green clashed, as did blue and cherry, blossom pink. Sasuke-kun? The two girls seemed to be hypnotized. Kiba growled at Naruto. What the hell? What is she doing to Sakura? He responded with a toothy smile. Beats the hell out of me, Inu. Koro, what did you just call me? Naruto noticed the small smile on Shino's face as he leapt into the air to kick Kiba in the head. At least there is a humorous member of Team 8. The good old shish. Youch. For that final remark, Akamaru had given him a rather severe ankle bite. You mutt. Hey. Shut your mouth, Uzumaki. Naruto screamed as he landed gently on all fours. You want some dog with your rabies, Inu? Koro? I'll send you my hospital bill. Every second, Kiba's face grew more and more red. Stop calling me that. And Akamaru does not have rabies. Sasuke was able to catch Shino's very quiet sigh and smirk. I share your misery and your bleeding eardrums. Kurenai sighed in frustration on the sidelines. The Kunoichi match was becoming as awful as this. Anko muttered a mocking remark, should we just hand the village over to Orochimaru now? Looks that way, Asuma muttered, I should just. Wait, Kakashi said idly as he turned to a new page in his book. I want to see how Hinata's genjutsu plays out. Kurenai raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms as she asked sweetly, speaking of, where did she learn such a complex genjutsu, Kakashi? I've been her sensei for a week, he said casually in response. That's hardly enough time for her to gain my trust to such a degree. It must have been something she learned outside of Konoha. He could admit inwardly, though not out loud, that he was quickly growing attached to this group of cynical misfits. Though each had followed a different path, they were all similar to him in certain ways and had endured suffering on par with or worse than him. Naruto was the rebellious, resolute outcast. Sasuke was the lofty, distant genius. And the silent one, Hinata. The one you were meant to be on the lookout for. While Naruto and Kiba argued loudly, Shino and Sasuke continued their controlled and measured spar. Anko let out a sigh. This is so boring, it was so unbelievable to her. Her long, blossom-colored hair was wrapped around him like a boa constrictor, and Sasuke was lovingly fingering it. Sakura-chan. He exhaled while giving her a fierce look. She reddened wildly. She exclaimed, Sasuke-kun, out loud. Sakura's fantasy world was pierced by a tortured scream. She grudgingly wrenched her gaze from her beloved. Sakura knew instinctively that the gray-haired shinobi was torturing Kiba once more. Weakly, he whimpered, Sakura, help me, he's going to. The man smiled a little and stabbed his elbow with his chakra-engulfed hand, bending his arm in the opposite direction. He let out another, louder scream. Sakura was extremely nauseous. She wondered how anyone could do that to another human being and not be appalled. She exclaimed, hold on, Kiba, I'm coming, with encouragement. She turned back to face Sasuke, her eyes beseeching him. Sasuke-kun, my teammate's in danger, let go please. He arched an inquisitive eyebrow. Who cares, it's just that stupid mudboy. She was able to say, but, Sasuke-kun. His life is in danger. Sakura had never been one to speak out against her one true love before. He said softly, leaning close to her face until their noses touched, so what, stay with me, Sakura. SSS Sasuke, she whispered, her eyes gummy. Did she have a crush on this same aloof boy wonder? Yes. Inner Sakura let out a cry. Honey, go for it. You're worthy of him. One more scream. Kiba's other arm had undergone the same procedure from the stranger. Both were now crookedly inward. Angled. As he tried to form words through the pain, a torrent of sweat was streaming down his face. It was a pointless act. She firmly exclaimed, Sasuke, and drew away from him. I need to help Kiba. He simply stared at her as if she were insane. You are so obnoxious, Naruto. And it's only gotten worse since you graduated. By some fluke, obviously. Shut your mouth. I graduated because I successfully performed the Bushin Jutsu, just like everybody else. Isn't it kind of funny how all of a sudden you could perfectly execute the Bushin Jutsu, when that was the reason you failed 2 years in a row? Naruto scoffed. He was not necessarily an idiot just because he wished to maintain the village's perception of him as such. Faye, he uttered absently. That doesn't seem to matter a whole lot, especially since now that we've graduated, all can clearly see who the better ninja is. You know, between the two of us. Yeah, completely obvious. I'm glad you've finally seen how much better than you I really am, Naruto. Are you delusional, Kiba, or did you just not see the way I kicked your ass a few minutes ago? Getting lucky seems to be your strong point, Kiba smirked. He menacingly flexed his clawed hand and asked, care for a rematch? If you're up for it, dog shit, Shikyaku no Jutsu, the technique of all fours. Kiba squatted down and charged at Naruto twice as fast as usual, causing him to narrow his eyes. Inuzuka, you're quick, but not that quick. Naruto blocked slowly as they traded blows. He turned around and threw 5 kunai, causing Kiba to roll to the left. The Inuzuka let out a frustrated growl. Naruto grinned. Guess you're not that cool after all, ne Kiba? He leapt for the mesmerized Hinata and exclaimed, you may be faster than me, but this is still a team spar. Sasuke and Naruto both attempted to flee for her, but they were too far away. Kiba threw himself at her, intending to tackle, but as though sensing the impending assault, she unfroze, her eyes wide. His hand barely touched her face as she abruptly leaned back, tearing off her eye covering. Kiba, whose momentum had carried him a few yards away, appeared to recognize his mistake. His gaze flickered between her and the eye patch as the jutsu started to revert. But all of a sudden, his determination was strengthened, and he charged at her once more. She made a rather unthreatening appearance as she leaned over, her hands gripping the spot where the cover had been. But with her hair hanging over her face, she disproved his theory by flashing her hands through seals too quickly for him to follow. A wall of earth erupted from the dirt just inches from Kiba's face as she slammed her open palms onto the ground. He hit the wall with a loud thud because he was moving too quickly to avoid it. OWWWWWWWWOHHHHH. Naruto hardly suppressed his laughter. After he ran to the fallen Inu Koro and picked up Hinata's eye patch, he approached her. "I'll just leave this here, okay?" She nodded rapidly, and he heard her fastening it firmly as he turned around. He fought the impulse to peek, reasoning that she would eventually come out and inform them. She got up, walked past Naruto, and rounded on the Kiba who was getting better. Hinata whispered, "Do you even realize what you just did?" He stared at her icy face, the scathing retort dying on his tongue. "No," he mumbled aggressively. "And I don't." Her response was, "You should care, because I have officially lost control of that genjutsu." Without the contact, the genjutsu leeches off the mind of the victim for fodder, twisting it to fine-tune its effectiveness. The situation I set up within the illusion becomes perfectly tailored to her mind. We can only be glad that Sakura has suffered little hardship in her life, and thus, I have hopefully taken the genjutsu to its most effective level. Otherwise. With anxiety, Kiba questioned, "Otherwise what?" Then Hinata grinned. It was the first time anyone in Konoha village had seen a smile. However, it wasn't a smile that was pleasant, or even the ghost smile that her teammates had grown used to. The smile was jaded and bitter, more appropriate for a war veteran than a young girl. Otherwise, who knows? Her mouth quivered dangerously. Her eyes filled with tears. But he could die. So, everybody dies sometimes, isn't that what they said back in the academy? Well, yes, but this death is Previn. He grabbed Sakura's hand and said, "Let's go, Sakura. I'm bored." Her mouth was hanging open as she gazed at him. She clenched her fists and steeled her shoulders as she turned her head away after a moment. "Sasuke, no," she exclaimed at last. "I have to help Kiba." "All right," he said, reverting to his icy Avenger persona. "Choose, me or Kiba." "If you're going to be like this, I don't know if we can be together," Sakura said angrily. Sasuke grinned viciously and pointed to her hair, which was now wrapped rather tightly around a pole, instead of around him. "Fine, but you're still stuck here," he said. "See you around, sweetie." He vanished in a cloud of smoke after making that last statement. "You are an absolute idiot, Sasuke-kun. You're right, as much as I hate to say it. Before that man kills Kiba, I have to go over there with my stupid hair, which is so tangled around this pole that I will never be able to untangle it. Are you actual? We're talking about a life, sweetie. Take action if necessary, get a kick out." Sakura inhaled deeply before drawing a kunai from her pouch. At once, Sakura became the center of attention. She was fumbling in her weapon holster, muttering something under her breath. When she pulled out a kunai, they instantly became alert. Hinata remarked, "I don't know what she'll do, attack, or self-harm," with a small furrow between her brows. "Or whatever." Sakura raised the kunai, pulling her hair up as though to put it in a ponytail, almost too fast for their eyes to follow. More interested than worried, Naruto questioned, "What is she doing?" Suicide was unlikely because he knew Sakura was far too obsessed with Sasuke to pass away without him confessing his unwavering love. She touched her hair with the kunai. As the bubblegum pink strands fell around her with an unnatural grace, Sasuke, Naruto, Hinata, Kiba, and even Shino watched in utter shock. Then, unconscious, she fell to the ground. "Did she seriously just do that?" Kiba cried, his mouth agape as he stared. "But she's a Sasuke groupie. Why the hell would she do that?" "The setting of my genjutsu made Sasuke her antagonist," Hinata said. "Most likely, this has expelled the illusion." Without showing any emotion, Shino said, "Could you explain a little more, Hinata-san?" She gave a nod. Because Sasuke was her enemy within the genjutsu, she had to fight him. In order to fight him, she had to break free of whatever was binding her to him physically, in this case, her hair. "I wonder why." "That's easy," rolled his eyes, Naruto said. Somebody started a rumor in the academy that Sasuke liked girls with long hair. That's why Sakura and Ino both grew their hair out. They even used to be best friends before they both got a crush on Sasuke. That's why they're rivals. That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Sakura let out a moan. She sat up lightheadedly, rubbing her head and struggling to bring herself back into balance. She looked around and murmured to herself, "What happened? Kiba." She surveyed the area. If he was looking at her in disbelief, he was fine. Then what was that? Is it just a crazy dream? No, it wasn't. It was a genjutsu. It had been cast on her by Hinata, that new girl. The spar was obviously long over. However, why did they all look at her as if she were insane? That's when she realized. Her signature silky, expertly shampooed and conditioned pink hair was on the ground, having been cut off from her head. She glanced shakily at the kunai she was holding, and it looked as if she had actually done it. As she dropped the kunai listlessly and bit her lip, trying to contain the sobs that were bursting out, she heard someone approaching. Her crystal green eyes were welling with tears. She would never, ever be liked by Sasuke now. And all because a certain girl needed to establish a point. A shuddering scream escaped her mouth. "Look at me," ordered Hinata. "Look at me, Haruno." Sakura looked up obediently and resentfully. She gasped in disgust and horror, and her mouth fell open. There was not another eye behind that eye patch, just a brown, lifeless, and awful-looking empty socket. Sakura huddled in close, gazing up at Hinata with a kind of subdued fear. The life of a ninja is a life of loss. You will lose your comrades, your friends, your innocence. After they leave you, you can never have them back. So don't you dare start crying about something that will actually grow again. With haste, she put the patch back on and turned away. "Well, I think that's enough sparring for now," Kakashi said, emerging out of nowhere amid the genin engaged in combat. Hinata nodded without showing any emotion. Sakura was unable to gaze at her. After silently gathering all of their members, both teams made their way back to Asuma's team. Team Alpha is the clear winner, and it's to be expected, I suppose. Kurenai felt irritated. "Oh, and how's that? I suppose your lovesick Kunoichi would act differently against Team 10, but that wasn't the case here. Besides, Kiba's cockiness against Naruto would have gotten him killed in the real world." The Inuzuka was moved by this evaluation. In fact, I'd say only Shino had the presence of mind to fight Sasuke, Naruto, and Hinata. If his teammates had been working with him, they would have stood a chance. The Junin with the red eyes sighed in agony. "Well, he's right. What have you two got to say for yourselves?" They all said, "Sorry, sensei," in a glum chorus. But Kiba's pride insisted on having the final say. "But Kurenai, sensei, Team Alpha has the top member of our graduating class and 2 Junin teachers, not just one. Can you really blame us for being a little less coordinated?" Sakura looked up at Kurenai and said, "Now that she thinks about it, why do they have 2 sensei?" She forced the overwhelming shame away and regained her courage in front of her sensei. She had no idea what being a ninja was like. "Want to field this one, Anko?" "Sure thing," was her response. Anko approached Sakura, lowered her head to the genin's level, and fixed her gaze on her. Sakura felt her spine tremble a little, and rightfully so. The Junin flicked her nose, and Sakura let out a sudden shriek. She said dismissively, "If you truly want to know, take it up with the Hokage. I really don't see why we have to work together. Waste of manpower. But then again, I'm not the Hokage, am I?" With a feeble shake of her head, the girl with the pink hair thanked the powers that be that Anko wasn't the Hokage. She said, "Good thing too, right?" Sakura froze like a rabbit in fear. "That's enough, Anko," Kurenai said, her laughter at her student's situation not entirely concealed. She wouldn't be in this situation, after all, if she weren't so obsessed with the Uchiha boy, which irritated her sensei. Sakura never did anything but gripe about Sasuke's absence from her team. "Hinata-san, I must ask you how you learned that jutsu. I had heard the art of Genpo was mostly lost in the 5 elementals." Taking a scroll from her belt, she quietly replied, "I don't know how common it is. I liberated this scroll from a library I visited, before giving it to Kurenai." The Junin carefully studied the scroll after opening it. "Hinata-san, would you mind if I borrowed this?" "You can have it. I've committed it to memory. Thank you. And, Yuhi-san, Kurenai is fine." "Kurenai-san, I never got the chance to thank you." Confused, she glanced at the young girl. "What do you mean?" "For taking me to Konoha." Kurenai gave her a disbelieving glance. She shook her head and closed her eyes. You remember that? You looked like you were in so much pain I thought you wouldn't be able to recall me. Anyway, you're quite welcome. Naruto interrupted Hinata's response with a well-timed groan from his stomach. He gave a sheepish smile. It's Ichiraku time, are we done, Anko? Her expression was grim. Well, I think Team Alpha is done, she said. It seemed as if the other two were unimportant because her team had kicked so much ass. Boring. She blinked at him and said, Cool, hey, Hinata-san. Do you want to come with me to get some ramen? Anyo. What is ramen? Shikamaru gave her an odd look. Does this girl actually exist? She was getting the same looks from everyone. The most dramatic, though, was Naruto. Are you serious? Ramen is the best food ever. And Ichiraku makes the best ramen ever. We can go right now, okay? Okay? Peeved. Anko interrupted. Ramen's not that great. Cheap though. By contrast, everybody's heard of Dango. Nay, Hinata-chan. What's Dango? Mitarashi-san. Are you serious? Dango is Dango. For Kage's sake, I'm taking you right away. Naruto remarked, but she already said she'd get some ramen. He took hold of her wrist and said, Let's go, Hinata-san. She took her other arm tightly and said, Yeah, but I'm more important than you, so win no matter what. Let's go, Hinata-chan. Glaring at one another, they both pulled on either side. Hinata interrupted feebly, Anyo, but they were already starting to turn around and pull. Can't we just do both? Never thought about that. That's why we need you on this team, Hinata-chan. Thinking outside the box. Unlike these two blockheads. Sasuke can go, too, Hinata added, growing more assured as the two became more relaxed, because Kakashi said, team bonding, as though he had been a part of the discussion from the start. What an excellent idea. A team suffers together, is more in line with what I was thinking of, but this also works. She gave a nod. But, she uttered softly, I don't have any money with me. With a generous, that's okay, Hinata-chan, this one's on me, Anko said. Naruto went on, and I have some ramen coupons we can use, can we please go now? Sasuke frowned, clearly not happy about being forced to eat with his team. Which one are we going to first, then? Ramen! Exclaimed Naruto with delight. Anko shouted, Dango! Simultaneously. There was a glaring match. Hinata let out a quiet sigh. Sasuke said without emotion, Why don't we let Kakashi-sensei make the decision? He was grinning slyly on the inside. He seems impartial. If it hadn't made him appear uncool, Kakashi would have glared at the astute Uchiha. That scene was very guys. So, Kakashi? Anko asked with a smooth voice, which will it be? Naruto simply gave him a frown. If he wanted to, the little blonde genin could ruin his life. Everyone knew that Uzumaki Naruto was an expert at pulling practical jokes, and he was also skilled at evading the Anbu, who were occasionally tasked with finding him. Additionally, Naruto could be extremely vindictive if the victim was someone who truly deserved to be the target of a mental prank. On the other hand, Anko was in a completely different league. Like Naruto, Kakashi shuddered if she believed her victim deserved what he was receiving. Her sadistic streak was miles long. There were some things better left unsaid. Let's go get some dango. Ah, damn it, shut up, dead last. You shut up, bastard, please, can't we just? Now, Naruto-chan, you shouldn't speak to betters like that. You are not my better, you, wannabe ninja. At least I'm not a wannabe Hokage, shut you. Suddenly, Hinata had forced the two boys' skulls together, and they were both on the ground. They sat up with a moan and glared at one another. She calmly asked Anko, which way to the dango stand? I thought you'd never ask. This way. As the rest of Team Alpha followed the two women, with Naruto and Sasuke rubbing their foreheads and continuing to exchange heated looks, Kurenai shook her head. Before sticking his nose back in his book, Kakashi ruffled the boy's hair and grinned, as she could tell by the look in his one eye. It would appear that the Hokage had made the right choice, despite her desire to have the enigmatic Hinata on her team. The fact that some of the Junin were referring to this team as Sarutobi's folly is astounding. He had to meet with the snobbish, controlling daimyo of Grass Country and possibly his spoiled son at 2 in the morning. Kaharu and Homura, his former teammates, would soon be coming to scold him for favoring the Kyuubi boy and waking them up, respectively. Right now, this was the last thing he wanted to be doing. However, he had to suppress a smile. Sarutobi stood behind his desk and gazed down at Team Alpha. Team Alpha glared back up at him with no shame. The Hokage let out a sigh. I'm getting too old for this. A smile split Naruto's face. Even Hinata flashed her ghostly smile in response to Sasuke's smirk. After lighting his pipe, Sarutobi rubbed his weary temples. Now, tell me what happened. The three looked at each other knowingly. As usual, Naruto was the first to speak. Well, ya see, old man, it all started when Iruka-sensei had finished taking me out for ramen. Last night, around 7 p.m., Naruto grinned broadly and patted his stomach. Thanks for treating me, Iruka-sensei, he said. It was one of those infrequent moments when he felt truly satisfied. The only person who had shown him kindness during his academy days was Iruka. Iruka complained, "It's a good thing I like you more than I like my wallet, Naruto." However, the irritated expression quickly vanished, and he smiled down at the blonde while lovingly ruffling Naruto's hair. All the way to Iruka's apartment, which was en route to Naruto's, the two kept up their lighthearted banter. Naruto called out, "Hey, thanks again Iruka-sensei," as the Chunin inserted the key into the lock. Iruka ignored Naruto's glares and turned to wave at him one last time before heading inside. When the Chunin vanished, Naruto's positive attitude followed. He stuffed his hands in his pockets as the smile vanished from his face like a deadweight. His demeanor turned cold and unfriendly. He had to behave in this manner to avoid being harassed on the way home. But people continued to glare at each other. They actually appeared to interpret his demeanor as an invitation to give him the most savage scowl. Well, he thought, screw him. His familiar ache persisted despite this. Even after the villagers repeatedly expressed their hatred for him, that didn't seem to go away. Uzumaki Naruto, the skilled but well-intentioned prankster and current genin of Team Alpha, said, it was always so completely unfair that he couldn't help but feel that little pang and wonder why the hell they couldn't look past his tenant and just look at him for once. The closer he got to his apartment, the more sour his mood became. People were more likely to shout at him or toss objects in his general direction because it was in a less respectable area. He increased his speed just enough to improve his time. When his building's door finally appeared, he exhaled a sigh of relief. Hey! Naruto whirled around, determined to get even with whoever was bothering him. Listen, man, I didn't do anything, I'm just trying to get home, and if you don't want to get hurt then just, Mizuki-sensei? The Chunin with the white hair grinned amiably down at Naruto. You get troubled often, going home? He muttered, nothing I can't handle, and briefly turned his head away. His electric blue eyes then shifted to the Chunin's face. What are you doing here, Mizuki-sensei? Mizuki said, I've seen how these people treat you, Naruto-kun, with empathy. You never catch a break, and for no apparent reason. Naruto said suspiciously, yeah. Why was he being so nice now, when Mizuki had never really reached out to him during his academy days? Mizuki asked abruptly, did you know that a Chunin is allowed to promote a genin he believes is worthy? No, well, there's a special test that a genin must pass, and if the Chunin thinks he or she has fulfilled the task to the best of his or her abilities, then they are promoted to Chunin rank. Why are you telling me this? Mizuki laughed and said, isn't it obvious? I want you to take the test. Although Naruto's mood slightly improved, he was still not persuaded. How come Iruka-sensei never told me about a test like that? The child was a sharpshooter. However, Mizuki was able to play the game as well. The empathetic expression returned. We were talking about it, Naruto-kun, we really were, but he said you weren't ready. He said you were too slow and immature, that you wouldn't understand. Mizuki saw the look of betrayed hurt on Naruto's face and took advantage of it in a vicious way. But I know you're ready for this. You're ready to prove yourself to everybody. You're ready to be the best. I'm giving you the chance, Naruto-kun. What do you say? What do I have to do? The Chunin's broad, amiable smile concealed his smirk. Well, first of all, finding Hinata still at the training grounds had taken Sasuke by surprise. She had come while he was away, and he had only gone to eat before returning there. She gave an owlish blink. Uchiha-san. Please. Sasuke-san is fine, he said without any thought. Sasuke suppressed a flinch. His old clan manners were being triggered by this girl's overly polite behavior. However, he discovered that he did want her to feel at ease enough to address him as Sasuke-san. But he wasn't quite prepared for the suffix "kun." Softly, Sasuke-san, she said. I'm sorry if I've taken your training grounds. I'll leave, if you wish. He gave a headshake. That's not necessary. You're a lot more tolerable than that Dobi. Abruptly, Hinata's eyes narrowed in memory. Why did he use such derogatory language toward Naruto? Compared to their classmates, all three of them were superior. Sasuke-san. I've been meaning to. Boom. Crack. Do you know what that was? He gave a headshake. No idea. We should probably investigate. Sasuke was shocked to see her nod, as he had only said this in the hopes that learning what it was might satisfy his curiosity. When she said, observe, assess the situation, and act on our information, she was being very professional. His cheeks turned slightly pink, and he decided to jump into the closest tree to hide from her. Exactly, though I am rather curious to see what it is. Thought so, I beg your pardon? Nothing, let's go. Naruto was beaming from ear to ear despite his heavy breathing. Using his patented sexy jutsu, it had been incredibly easy to take the text. After that, he had carried the forbidden scroll to a remote training area. It had taken some time, but he had finally mastered Kage Bushin no Jutsu, the first technique on the scroll, with a great deal of focus. According to what he had read, the jutsu was prohibited since it needed an excessive amount of chakra, which he just so happened to have in abundance. Since the great Kitsune had been sleeping for the past few days, Kyuubi had not been coaching him. However, Naruto believed he had performed fairly well on his own. The biju stirred inside his head. Kyuubi, what are you doing, Since Mizuki Sensei claimed that mastering a technique on this large scroll would make me a chunin, I took it from the Hokage's office, niece, Great, Kid Ling. This is a great opportunity to learn the village's hidden techniques, but I don't think you should trust that teacher. I thought we had decided that about everyone except for Amino. Don't call me that. The use of the pet name the Kyuubi had given him when they were first introduced infuriated Naruto on the inside. It was a show of affection when he was younger, much younger, but now it was just embarrassing. Furthermore, do you believe Mizuki Sensei misled me? Why would they give you this test in place of the Uchiha genius? You know what this village is like. Yes, indeed. I suppose you're correct, Naruto-san? He almost let the scroll fall. Holy S, Hinata-san. The pale girl stood behind him, staring at him with open curiosity, her head cocked to the side. He started to perspire. Sasuke, irritated, said, "What the hell did you do this time, idiot?" His swift, dark eyes darted about the clearing, absorbing the bloodshed. Because of Naruto, a number of trees appeared to have seen better days, and one in particular had been mistreated so severely that it had been split in two. The noise they had heard must have been the sound of the massive tree breaking and falling. Thus, one question was addressed. However, how did the last person in their class gain such authority? "What's that scroll you're holding?" the taller boy asked inquisitively. "You automatically fail if anybody realizes what you're doing." He gave himself a mental slap and said, Nothing at all. Now please go away." That Teme Mizuki was lying, so it didn't matter what he said. Kyuubi was correct. They would have put their cherished Uchiha genius to the test. Naruto could feel the bitterness rising inside of him. Sasuke never had to worry about anything because he had everything he could possibly want. There was no doubt that Uzumaki Naruto could not be said to be in the same category. Hinata started talking as he opened his mouth to continue berating them into letting him alone. Her curiosity was genuine as she asked, "Naruto-san, what are you doing?" Sasuke could have easily endured the constant onslaught of hateful insults, but Naruto was unable to respond to her question because he was so completely emotionless. There was no hidden animosity or rage, it was just a straightforward, innocent question. Thus, he revealed the information. He told them how Mizuki had cornered him outside his apartment and told him how to make Chunin immediately. He also explained how, much faster in his story than in reality, he had realized that Mizuki had lied to get him to steal the scroll, though he wasn't sure why. He had an uneasy feeling that Mizuki wanted to expel him from the village or something. Sasuke wasn't convinced. If you knew it was a lie from the get-go, why did you bother to steal the scroll? Why not just tell the Hokage? Naruto gave a proud sniff. Obviously, Teme, I am playing into the enemy's hands on purpose to lure them into a false sense of confidence. I thought the genius of our year would have realized that. Sasuke said, averting his gaze from the blonde. Naruto smiled. Did you tell the Hokage? Hinata asked quietly as she turned to face him. No, but honestly, I didn't want to bother the old man with that. It just seemed like a waste of time. Sasuke gave a sneer. So what were you planning on doing then? Just taking out Mizuki Sensei by yourself? Well, yeah. That's dumb, he's just a chunin, anyway. And you didn't even ask us. What? You didn't even ask us to come help you, Hinata remarked, subtly echoing Sasuke's tirade. The Uchiha snorted angrily and folded his arms across his chest. After that bell test Kakashi gave us, I'd have thought you'd realize we're a team, Baka, said Sasuke. The bell test. Naruto flinched. 3 days into their second training week, Kakashi had told them they would be doing a survival exercise instead of training the following day since Anko would not be present. Be there at 5 a.m. and don't eat breakfast, you'll throw it up. Kakashi clarified that the Hokage was conducting an impromptu test to determine whether the teams had been making the necessary progress when he finally arrived, at noon, and that those that were lagging behind would be pruned. None of Team Alpha's genin were at all interested in the prospect of being cut off from the ninja system. Presenting 2 bells, Kakashi clarified that the first 2 to receive one would be returned to the Ninja Academy. The person who failed to receive a bell would be permanently barred from becoming a ninja. Right away, Sasuke and Hinata had deftly concealed themselves among the nearby trees. Naruto, on the other hand, had jumped right in. Kakashi Sensei had successfully retaliated, or at least tried. Hinata had mistook Kakashi Sensei's next jutsu for a fire type when she saw the hand seals their teacher was creating. Fearing that Kakashi would kill Naruto, she instantly launched 5 senbon to various pressure points on Kakashi's arm. Kakashi didn't have time to stop Naruto's shadow clone from striking him in the side, as he had to avoid the weapons or risk becoming paralyzed. He appeared to be unconscious after a rough landing. Before Hinata intervened, Naruto had started to stomp over, determined to ensure his permanent removal. Naruto.kun, there are easier and safer ways to check if someone is unconscious. She pulled some senbon from her weapons pouch and threw them in the same locations as before, but this time they made contact. But a log appeared and a puff of smoke appeared in a matter of seconds. Hinata had tensed up and whirled in a protective crouch. Naruto mimicked her, albeit a little more slowly. That was quite clever, Hinata.san. Then, like a clone, he poofed himself into oblivion. Subsequently, he had eliminated Hinata, pitting his extraordinary speed against hers. She had little chance as a genin. Before long, she was bound. Naruto was caught when he attempted to free her. Sasuke decided to attack at this moment, but he ended up head deep in the ground. Sasuke was shocked to find himself strapped to a log. As Kakashi untied them, Naruto and Hinata had been staring at him, one with surprise and the other with joy. Naruto, Hinata. Chan, you two showed the most teamwork, which was the point of the test. For that, I'm giving you lunch. But as for your abysmal performance, I'm not sure if I'm ready even to send you back to the academy. As for you, Sasuke. Kakashi only shook his head and gave them the meal. I'm leaving to deliberate, and you too, if you give him food, you'll fail for sure, y'all. While Hinata had glanced up at Sasuke, Naruto had immediately started eating his bento without hesitation. He looked around. At this point, his stomach had been complaining loudly, but he said, "It's okay. You don't need to fail for me." She gave a small smile. Well, if the point of the test really is teamwork, then Kakashi Sensei surely can't begrudge me giving this to you. Additionally, Naruto had grudgingly given over a rice ball. Next. The genin had winced. What the hell did I just say? Not to give the emo kid food. Just for that, you pass. What? Kakashi went on to clarify that the test's actual goal was for participants to trust one another and cooperate as a team. He pointed to a big pillar and said, "Those who don't follow the rules are trash, but those who forget their comrades are lower than trash." That is called the Shinobi Cenotaph. It has the names of all the shinobi who have been killed in action. Always work together, and maybe you can avoid that fate longer than my team did. Hinata said softly, "For me, learning to trust people is very hard," and Naruto closely observed her eye as the ghosts of her past scurried through it. "But, I am willing to try, if you do too." After a moment of staring at her, he turned to face Sasuke. "Come on, Dobi." For once, the vile moniker was not a sign of genuine disdain. Sasuke seemed to be asking politely. "All right. What's the plan?" Naruto was diligently practicing when Iruka discovered him first. He was by himself. Saying, "I've finally found you," Iruka leapt to Naruto's level. Iruka. Sensei. Naruto, what do you think you're doing? Why did you steal the scroll from the Hokage's office? And in what manner? How had the Hokage been outclassed by a mere genin? He smiled like a vulpine. "Well, Mizuki. Sensei said that if I was able to take the scroll and learn one jutsu from it, that I would be promoted to Chunin." "What? Why would he?" "Hello, Iruka.kun, Naruto.kun. If you could please hand over that scroll, I'd be ever so grateful. Standing in a tree, Mizuki watched the two with triumph. He gave me a nasty smirk. Thank you, Naruto-kun, for doing all the dirty work for me, he replied. Now just give me that scroll, demon child, and I won't have to hurt you much. Suddenly, Naruto's face went blank. His eyes grew icy. You think you can hurt me? What do you know that can hurt me? I know something. I know that you, hissing, Iruka said, Mizuki. That is forbidden to be spoken of, don't say it. Ha. He deserves to know why everybody hates him, don't you think? Naruto calmly questioned, is it because I am the container of the demon Kyuubi no Kitsune? They both turned to look at him. How did you? Thanks, he said icily. I can really put two and two together. Now what can you do or say that will hurt me, Mizuki? Anything else? If I really am the demon you think I am, then you really don't stand a chance against me. And those words of yours can hardly hurt, since I already knew they were true. So what'll it be? The Chunin with the white hair was furious. Why you? He jumped at Naruto, ready to strike. Not so fast. Suddenly there were Sasuke and Hinata standing on either side of Naruto. Sasuke firmly stated, attacking one of us means attacking all of us, before lowering himself into an aggressive taijutsu stance. Hinata followed suit. With a gentle yet forceful tone, Hinata questioned, so are you ready to defend against everything we've learned? You're just one team. What have you been able to learn? They meant what we've learned from this forbidden scroll, Naruto grinned, his expression positively malevolent. Should we show him, guys? Oh, let's, Naruto stated solemnly, and that's how he was reduced to a blubbering pile of flesh, Hokage. Sama, the playful gleam in his eyes contradicted this solemn tone. From behind his desk, the Hokage cast an imperious glance at the three of them. Team Alpha looked back and awaited verdict. Team Alpha, tonight you stole our village's most sought after scroll and then proceeded to attack and nearly kill a Chunin of this village with your stolen knowledge. He glanced at Naruto. You have revealed your secret to your teammates, which is strictly forbidden, even for you. Naruto gasped in surprise. He frantically looked from Hinata to Sasuke, but he had completely forgotten. They were aware that they knew they. Calm down, Hinata said, placing a hand on his shoulder while maintaining eye contact with the Hokage. He was wonderfully deflated as the panic left his body like helium leaving a balloon. At least they didn't. Sarutobi's smile was concealed. However, I am not your team leader, and I think I will leave your punishment up to Kakashi and Anko. The two boys exchanged mute horror glances. They mouthed the name together, Anko. Hokage. Sama. A blur of Tanis flew in through the window. When the Tokubetsu Junin landed loudly on the office floor, it roared, Mitarashi Anko. Arriving. And then strode directly up the Hokage's desk. Hokage. Sama. I demand to see my team right now. And what exactly did they do? I just ran into Iruka and he wouldn't tell me a thing, and... Sarutobi's eyebrows went up. The faintly clad Junin coughed quietly behind them. She pivoted. Hey team. Anko's eyes widened slightly before her face went oddly blank. I've just released them to you for punishment. They managed to steal the forbidden scroll, incapacitate Mizuki, and reveal the knowledge of the Kyuubi's true fate to 3 underage people. I see. Thank you, Hokage. Sama, we'll be leaving now. Although Sasuke and Hinata were able to give the Hokage a courteous bow before departing, Naruto began to leave. They continued to walk without Anko indicating their destination or her emotional state. At last, they reached their bridge, where they gathered every morning prior to training. So, Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata gazed at her with anticipation. With a heavy voice, Sasuke asked, what'll it be? Naruto proposed, 100 laps around the village each morning and night? Sasuke added, target practice for you and Kakashi, sensei? Ooh, swimming through an alligator-infested swamp? How about seeing how long we can last before fainting while being suspended over an active volcano? Kakashi had shown up. I believe I should have a hand in your punishment as well, don't you think so, boys? He looked at Anko. They looked at each other knowingly. Do you think? Oh, yes. Definitely. That'll teach him, she answered, grinning slyly. Your punishment will be. The 3 genin prepared to be struck. To take us out to dinner and explain what the hell you did. About halfway through, Naruto's groveling was cut off. Oh god no, please, Anko, have Wait, what? You want us to what? Anko exclaimed, tell me what happened, as though it ought to have been clear. How did you steal the Forbidden Scroll? First of all. Second of all, how did you each learn a different technique, and which ones did you learn? You know, the works. Hinata appeared taken aback. You mean you're not angry or upset? Upset? Angry? Enko's expression changed to one of surprise. I'm proud? My very own team. Breaking into the Hokage's office without detection and stealing the Forbidden Scroll, attempting to learn and successfully learning high rank Forbidden Jutsu, and beating the crap out of Mizuki. I hated that pretentious jackass. I would hug you right now if I wasn't, you know, me. The genin looked at each other, wide-eyed and silent. Naturally, it was Naruto who broke the silence. Oh yeah. Team Alpha strikes again, baby, he exclaimed, striking an absurd pose with his hips wide apart and one hand in the air in the form of a V. One more quiet. A chuckle then broke out. Hinata burst out laughing, and Naruto, Sasuke, Enko, and even Kakashi turned to look at her. Her pale face became amused by the simple smile, and her complexion suddenly took on a little more color. For a moment, she felt joy. Looking away from her team, Hinata clamped a hand over her mouth as soon as she appeared to realize what she had done. Her cheeks flushed a pale pink. Finally, Enko grinned and said, well, I think we've found the secret to getting Hinata out of her shell. Yeah, said Kakashi. Make sure Naruto continues to act like himself. That is, like an idiot, smirked Sasuke as he concluded. Hey, unbeknownst to them at the time, Team Alpha had just arrived at a turning point. That night was the beginning of their journey to greatness. Scarecrow to Sunny, do you copy? Over. Scarecrow, this is Sunny, over. Are you in position? Over. Sunny is in position, over. Firefox, are you in position? Over. Firefox is in position. Girly.boy, are you in position? Over. I refuse to answer to that ridiculous name, Dobie, over. My code name is Firefox, yours in Girly.boy. Accept it, over. My code name was supposed to be Red Eye, thank you very much, over. Okay, Pink Eye. Are you in position? OV. Ouch. What the fuck, Sasuke? This is a fucking waste of time, Enko complained ominously. The fat, irate brown cat with the red ribbon tied on its left ear was approached by Hinata, who sighed and took off her earpiece. She quickly persuaded the furious cat to approach her and leap into her arms by softly clicking her tongue. She petted him, and he purred happily. How do you do that? Kakashi inquired inquisitively. Damn thing, he remembered the mother of this cat. It seemed as though they intentionally continued to produce temperamental cats in order to ensure that there would be an adequate supply of D-rank missions. Hinata gave a shrug. I'm good with animals. For a long time, they were the only things that were kind to me. He stopped talking. Kakashi, want to give me a hand, asshole? Enko cried out as she attempted to separate Naruto and Sasuke. Well, this seems to be a successful mission. Glancing at her fellow Junin, Enko grimaced. Shut the hell up, Kurenai. If you had these two boys on your team, you'd be begging me to take them off your hands, and besides, it is successful. In case you didn't notice, Hinata is holding the target. Yeah, we saw all the team effort that went into this, mission, Kiba mentioned sarcastically behind his back. Unfortunately for him, Team Alpha had excellent hearing, and when he stopped mumbling, everyone's heads snapped toward him. Before turning away, he had the grace to blush a vivid shade of pink. Sakura avoided eye contact and appeared to give Hinata extra consideration, while Shino appeared stoic. His new arrangement did not bother the one-eyed girl. Kurenai said, I'm sorry to bother you, though, with a genuine sense of regret. We have to go. We've got a mission of our own. Enko suggested, garden, weeding, house, painting, or maybe it's a preemptive strike against that damn cat, pointing to the contentedly purring bundle in Hinata's arms. Scroll. Delivering, actually, we're going to the border of fire and grass. There was a hint of smugness in her voice, despite her best efforts to conceal it. After all, she truly liked both Kakashi and Enko, despite their peculiarities. Your team continues to perform D ranks. Enko said, good luck to you, then, with a sudden smile, goodbye. Kurenai, a little bewildered, went out of sight with her team. Enko's bright smile vanished. Ooh, she gets on my fucking nerves sometimes. Let's hurry up and take this damn cat back, and then we are getting a C rank if it's the last thing I do. Really? Yes, sir. I honestly think Team Alpha is ready for a mission of greater caliber than a D rank, Enko replied with conviction. Sarutobi cast a critical glance at the Tokubetsu Junin. And Kakashi.kun? What are your thoughts on the matter? Anko was panicking on the inside, but her face remained the same. She had just rushed up here, cannons blazing, without giving her company teacher any thought, and she hadn't even asked Kakashi what he thought. She was aware that the Hokage held the copy.nin in high regard and that, in addition to being a special Junin, he held a higher rank than she did. Fuck. Hokage. Sama, it is my belief that Team Alpha is ready for a C-rank mission. The next time they went out with the other Junin, Anko promised to buy Kakashi a drink, and he let out a sigh of relief. In front of the Hokage, he had just spared her a great deal of humiliation. Sarutobi grinned down at the three genin, the lines around his eyes crinkling. Well, if you the endorsement of both your teachers, I will be happy to assign your first C-rank mission. Sasuke was smirking, Naruto was smiling, and even Hinata was smiling a little. A client has just arrived, needing an escort back to his home village, Sarutobi said. Please, Tazuna.san, come and meet your escort. The door opened. Naruto was expecting a pirate, a daimyo, or something. Hell, something spectacular. Someone worth putting his life in danger for, someone worth fighting for. He anticipated that this mission would be significant and transformative, strengthening his team and imparting valuable life lessons, or something. What he got instead was a grumpy old man who lacked the warmth Sarutobi had inherited from his grandfather. He had a sake bottle in one hand and another fastened to his belt. His clothes were soiled and odorous. He was also giving them a glare. Because his eyes were bloodshot and unfocused, the drunk's glare failed miserably to pierce Hinata and Kakashi. This is really a ninja team? Two of them are half blind, he exclaimed. Naruto had no such reservations, but Sasuke rolled his eyes and stifled a snort. With what must have been a friendly smile, Kakashi said, You know, it's very bad form to come to the Hokage's office drunk, sir. You might give us the impression that your mission is not that important to you, or that there is something incorrect in the information you have given us. You might give us the impression that you're hiding something, in short. His words were intended to stop him from insulting the genin any further, but they also had the unintended consequence of making Tazuna instantly stiffen and splutter over both his words and his sake jug. What? I would never, how ridiculous. Everyone could tell by his body language what he wasn't. Sarutobi's gaze grew strained. Is there something you would like to share with us, Tazuna.san? No, sir, I am so sorry for complaining about the team, my apologies. A Chunin entered through the window and presented the Hokage with a scroll while bowing. The elderly man gave a nod in return and opened it, briefly ignoring the Tazuna's fast-paced panic. After reading it, he let out a sigh and then gestured with his hand. Two Chunin showed up and bowed as well. Sarutobi said, Please escort Tazuna.san to Penitentiary of the Fan, referring to the prison that was named in honor of the Uchiha clan. The Hokage gave the bridge builder a venomous glare Naruto had never seen before. Lying to the Hokage is bad enough, but endangering our genin? Unforgivable. Minimum sentence for this offense is a 5-year incarceration. Since I can see you did this out of genuine lack of funds, I will allow the minimum to be carried out. But if you ever attempt to sabotage this village's younger ninja, I will personally make sure that you are not fit to do so again. His Chunin guards dragged Tazuna away while he thrashed wildly and screamed about his family and a man named Gatu. He was stared at by Team Alpha. Well, I suppose that a C-rank mission will have to wait a little longer, Sarutobi replied. Again, he was changed into a kind grandfather. How does house painting sound for today? San. A house was painted by Team Alpha. They walked dogs for the local animal shelter after that. They weeded gardens after that. In just a few hours, they had effortlessly finished 3D rank missions. They were all prepared for a fresh challenge. Sasuke muttered, This is such a waste of time, as the woman whose garden they had weeded waved them off. For some reason, she watched Naruto's retreating back as though he might suddenly jump back and attack her. For once, Naruto's face was devoid of vitality, and his onyx eyes swept over it. Yes, exactly. Demon Fox. Too frequently, Sasuke considered Naruto's burden in terms of the power it bestowed rather than the vile looks of those who had lost friends and family to the beast. For once, we agree, Naruto remarked glumly. As Hinata giggled very softly, he pantomimed dying in the street, his negative attitude dissipating. I need a C-rank mission, stat, he exclaimed. Although she was still hesitant to express her feelings in such a public setting, she was making great strides. She was frightened. Because of those people she had known in the past, Hinata had such distant dreams of happiness and trust. When they learned about her condition, some of them who had initially appeared to be fast and true friends turned around and left her. She had been marked as a child. The association was disliked. She was concerned about what these people would do if they learned. Would they turn her away too? However, she had this feeling with them. It was not the same. It was different from before. Most of her past encounters with people had always been tinged with uneasiness, which she believed was caused by the way she had been treated by her captors in her early years and that she would never be able to overcome. She didn't feel that way, though, because of these two boys and her two teachers. It was odd. She was reflective and reclusive during training, and her thoughts persisted into the following day. Arriving. Anko joined the three genin at 7 after they had warmed up alone for 2 hours. Between 30 minutes and 3 hours after 7 o'clock, Kakashi arrived. "I've got a surprise for you three," Anko exclaimed proudly. "You'll never guess what it is." "A C-rank mission?" was Sasuke's guess. She gave a scowl. "How did you know? What else could get you excited other than the prospect of possible violence?" "He almost knows you too well." Anko was behind Kakashi. All three of his pupils gazed at him. Naruto was able to say, "What the hell, Kakashi? Sensei, you're on time." "Yeah, he's rarely late for missions, or else Hokage Sama gets a little upset." Naruto angrily exclaimed, "But he's late for D-rank missions all the time." "Real missions, brat, real missions. Alright, you've got 30 minutes to go home, pack for a 2-week trip, and then meet us at the front gate. Got it?" "Yes, sensei," Naruto exclaimed, practically bouncing with joy. Hinata gave a nod. "HN. What was that, Sasuke-kun?" "Yes, ma'am." "You overpacked, Naruto-san," Hinata muttered. The two of them reached the gate first. Naruto was struggling to keep his enormous, protruding pack on his back. "We are only to be gone 2 weeks." He looked down at his feet, a little embarrassed, and said, "I know, but I was really excited. I can't help it." Hinata looked at him with a faint smile on her lips, but he was blind to it. She said, "I can help you, if you want, let's go through it." "Hinata-chan, you don't have a pack at all, aren't you under-packed?" "No, I'm used to surviving with next to nothing, it's habit to under-pack for me." After going through all of his belongings for almost 10 minutes, they had trimmed it by 85%. With the extras in tow, Naruto sent a number of shadow clones back to his apartment, where he waited for them to dispel themselves so he could be sure his belongings were secure. He had learned that last little trick from Hinata, but it was one of the jutsu he had learned from the Forbidden Scroll. It had become a valuable tool for studying, something he detested, as soon as she had informed him and highlighted the jutsu's evident benefits. Depending on how many clones he used, the time could now be halved or even reduced. The drawback, though, was that the knowledge acquired was not accompanied by any real-world experience. He reasoned that a jutsu would be more effective. Sasuke and Anko had both arrived by now. Kakashi arrived just 1 minute late. To the surprise of all her students, Anko just sighed. "Our mission is to go to Sanagakure and be assigned border duty by the Kazekage or one of his subordinates." Naruto immediately grumbled, "We're going to another village to do another boring mission. Why don't we just have border patrol here in Konoha? Then at least I know that I care about what I'm patrolling." "It's a sign of trust and good faith when another Kage allows foreign ninja to take border duty in his country," Kakashi stated. The Kazekage clearly wants to strengthen ties with Konoha. Still doubtful, Naruto turned his head away. "It's a 3-day hike to Sanagakure, ninja speed," Anko replied. "So it's time to get going." They arrived at Sanagakure no Sato 3 days later. Sasuke, Hinata, and Naruto were enthralled. It was difficult not to stare at the city because it was so different from their own. It was all just a huge hole in the earth. Many of the buildings had sphere-shaped tops, and all were carved out of stone rather than constructed of wood. Everything was the color of dusty brown. In order to blend in with the desert landscape, even the shinobi wore brown and other color combinations. Hinata pointed out that the shinobi here were different in both attitude and attire. In contrast to Konoha's semi-normal and eccentric ninja, they were quiet and grim. This was definitely no Guy or Anko equivalent. They made too much noise. Naruto's violent hyperactivity had vanished out of instinct, but Anko's had vanished out of professionalism. A strong creature, akin to the Kyuubi, was present. He couldn't tell what it was, because the large, useless lump was currently napping. However, it made him nervous. With the assistance of a nearly gaunt male ninja who had 2 wing-like devices fastened to his back, they managed to reach the Kazecage's office. The Kazekage said, "Welcome to Suna," in a chilly tone that was anything but friendly. Almost as if on cue, Naruto tensed his back. Together with the other energy that was lingering on the periphery of his consciousness, this man gave him the creeps, which made Naruto a very anxious ninja. However, his teachers and teammates appeared unaffected. Perhaps Sasuke was standing a little more rigidly than normal, but Kakashi, Anko, and Hinata's laid-back demeanors told him that they had all been in similar circumstances before. Once more, he pondered what had happened to Hinata prior to her arrival in Konoha. "I hope you have studied the rules of my village accurately. We do not tolerate mistakes here, especially not from ignorant foreigners. My Junin Baki will accompany you to the place which you have been assigned, along with another team of my ninja. Even allies must take precautions, yes?" Naruto wanted to roll his eyes because the question was so blatantly rhetorical. He held back, partly because he felt the mystery energy approaching and partly because he didn't want to die. If he felt right, it was actually just outside the window. The Kage's words, "Get Temari, Kankuru, and Gaara in here," he emphasized the last name especially, as though it were a curse. A boy about their age, possibly a little younger, was revealed when the whirl of sand subsided. Naruto was momentarily perplexed because there was no wind to pick it up. He was dressed in typical desert garb, with the possible exception that his bodysuit was dark black rather than sandy brown. On his back he carried a big gourd that pulsed with what Naruto called Yuki, or demon energy. His blood-red hair partially covered what appeared to be a tattoo on his forehead. Out of thick black outline behind his hair, cold teal eyes glared at them. Naruto was unable to determine whether the black was coal or the product of sleep deprivation from numerous nights. But he was aware that this was the ghostly force that had been hovering over his consciousness. "Hi. I wish you had warned me before you did that," Naruto growled at the Kyuubi. "What might happen if I became angry with this nut? Either his son or the Kage? Well, in addition to being a jinchuriki, the redhead is the son of the Kage. Ichibi no Shukaku. One tail, PFFT. No issue. What I wouldn't give for a seal like that. So close to freedom, so close to rendering flesh with my own teeth and claws. But there is, Kitling. His seal is infinitely weaker than yours, so he has much greater access to Ichibi's power." Naruto mumbled, suppressing his gag reflex. Okay, no need to get off right in front of me. Does that indicate that this child is unstable, then? A must. It seems like Gaara-kun has never slept at all, and I can feel Shukaku constantly staring at his mental walls. That isn't makeup, then. No, he isn't quite at that point, however, his brother. Well, although Naruto repeated, the Kyuubi had already vanished. He focused on the young shinobi who had just entered and knew what the fuzzball was referring to. The boy, who appeared to be Gaara's brother, had a mummy-like strapped to his back and was sporting kabuki makeup. A girl in light purple and fishnet, with dirty blonde hair and 4 spiky ponytails, was their last Sungakure companion. She had a big fan on her back. Baki quickly identified them by pointing to each one in turn. "Gaara, Kankuru, Temari," she said. "Names?" Kakashi drew lead languidly. Mitarashi Anko, Hitaki Kakashi, Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata. In order to draw their attention to himself, Naruto believed he had deliberately omitted their last names when he spoke his own. He had read that the name Hitaki was notorious, particularly in the hidden sand. Lately, he had been reading a lot more. A well-known sand ninja had been killed by a man named Hitaki Tsukumo, according to Konoha's greatest, a history. Naruto pondered the relationship between his sensei and Hitaki Tsukumo. "We'll be departing at the entrance to the village in 15 minutes, Baki replied. "Meet us there by that time." "Thank you for your time, Kage. Sama," Kakashi said as he escorted them from the entrance. Naruto didn't let out a little whoosh of relief until they were safely outside in the fresh air. Kakashi's hair was ruffled. "Glad to be out of there, They had traveled from Sunagakure to the Kusa no Kuni border in a few hours. Eventually, the desert gave way to long stretches of golden plains with little vegetation. With the exception of their leader, Baki, who occasionally grunted commands, the sand team had been completely silent. It was a very annoying departure from Naruto's typical environment. In addition to not speaking at all, Hinata had shut down once more, despite their best efforts to help her come out of her shell. Out of all the things that hurt him the most, he couldn't explain why it bothered him so much to see her eyes shudder like a window, losing the glimmering sheen that had become normal. Kakashi exclaimed, "Time to set up our shifts." With a joy that he reserved for when they were in for an especially difficult training day. Naruto held back a moan. He said, "If you don't mind," to Baki. He took the Suna Junin's grunt as confirmation. Alright then. First shift is Naruto, Kankuro-san, and Sasuke. Second is Hinata, Temari-san, and Anko. Third is me, Baki-san, and Gara-san. The redhead gave a contemptuous snort. Baki said, Gara does not require sleep. In response, he will, essentially, be on every shift. I see, said Kakashi, who remained cheerful. Then I suppose you and I will take the third shift as a pair. Now, if you could explain to us the protocol for camping in this neck of the woods, so to speak, that would be excellent. In his gravelly, always irritated voice, Baki laid out some guidelines for camping on the plains, what to do in the event of an enemy attack, and other things. Naruto assumed that the annoyance was primarily focused on their ignorance of Suna protocol, but what did he expect? A crash course in the manners of Konoha's academy allies. His focus shifted from Baki to his thoughts, where the Kyuubi offered far more insightful information. Describe Ichibi for me. A tanuki of low study WHO got disappointed with his lot in the demonic hierarchy. Tanuki? Pranksters and shapeshifters in general. Not as elicited as Kitsune, of course, but they are able to henge. They have two common formats, tea kettle and monk, and both are used to play tricks on people, naturally. Nothing as far reaching or powerful as. Indeed, Kitsune is the greatest. I understand. Similar to how tailed beasts have accumulated their tails over centuries, Shukaku developed his powerful one tail, which ultimately drove him insane with power. How is that? By putting its predecessor to the test, defeating it, and ultimately destroying it. That's one approach. However, I doubt I could accomplish that with G.San. Hokage is quite delicious, you won't know until you try it. So that's how you got your tails. I was created as I am, a standard that all other tailed beasts attempt, and fail, to surpass. The beast, of course, sounded horrified at the very notion. Made? Born, you mean? No I don't. And for the remainder of the evening, he would say nothing more. Sasuke and Kankuro, who were both brooders anyhow, hardly noticed Naruto brooding during his shift. Barely is the crucial word. Naruto. The blonde nearly didn't turn since he was so accustomed to Sasuke referring to him by the derogatory and hated moniker, Dobi. Even Sasuke, however, had recognized that they should not display any team weakness to their allies in this circumstance. He would save the name, calling for later, when neither his siblings nor the Kabuki boy, whose name may have been Kankuro, could possibly overhear them. Why are you brooding? I am not brooding. Sasuke gave him a look. Do you even know who you're talking to? Uchiha Sasuke. If anybody knows a brooder when he sees one, it's me, got it? Naruto gave a snort. When did you get so reasonable? Trying to understand Hinata. I like understanding things, and when I don't understand something, I don't like it. So I tried to understand Hinata. Yep. So when that didn't work, I figured you would be an easier nut to crack. He laughed. You're just practice leading up to the big finale. It caught Naruto's attention. Understand her? Yeah. Understand her. Find out why she acts the way she does. Not that I don't think it's a good idea, but why? Why do you care? Sasuke remarked, she's not like the other girls, following a pause. She's different. I've never not understood a female. Sakura and Ino and pretty easy to figure out, you know? But Hinata is special. I can't explain it. I can't explain the feeling. Sounds like somebody's in Louvre. Sasuke yelled, ah, shut up, Dobi, going back to their previous system of nicknames. As if you're any better. And what's that supposed to mean? In an extremely contemptuous tone that concealed something Naruto wasn't sure he was prepared to discover, Sasuke said, you go out of your way to help her all the time. And you totally make a fool out of yourself just to make her smile. It's so obvious. Naruto calmly remarked, just because I'm a decent person doesn't mean I'm crushing on her. You, on the other hand, paying a speck of attention to any female besides Anko is suspect. HMPH. Our shift is almost over. I will go and wake Hinata, he said triumphantly before getting up and leaving. Before realizing he needed to wake Anko, Naruto smirked and rolled his eyes. Ah, shit. He went to bed with a big, hurting bump on his head from his female sensei, and he had yet another small grievance against Sasuke to add to his growing list of complaints about the Avenger. Kankuro watched them in silence, taking in as much as he could about the dynamic of the Konoha team. Who could have predicted when such information would be crucial to the accomplishment of their larger invasion mission and, eventually, to the restoration of Sanagakure no Sato's greatness? The blonde girl looked at Hinata and said, you're awfully quiet for a Konoha shinobi, in an experimental manner. With the smallest of shrugs, the small girl continued to keep her watchful eyes on the plains. Tamari went on, "You're kinda small as well," in an attempt to get the brunette to talk. There were a few silences before Hinata responded, and she nearly turned away once more. Hinata whispered back to her, "You're a little annoying for a Suna shinobi," so softly that she hardly heard it. Unseen, Enko smiled from the sidelines across the camp. Hinata was getting stronger. "Is there a reason you are speaking to me, besides perhaps for your own amusement? Is there anything wrong with getting to know one's allies?" Her eyes didn't waver as she said, "You don't exactly seem the type." Tamari scowled. "What could you possibly know about me? You didn't meet me until half a day ago." Hinata gave a shrug. "Plenty. Oh, enlighten me." "You are a blonde female of approximately 15 years of age who is specialized in wind-based attacks. But I suppose anyone could tell you that by looking at you. You are a cynical and jaded person, the daughter of the cruel Cage. As the oldest, you feel responsible for both of your younger brothers, but your fear of one cripples your ability to do your duty. Your team is hiding something from my team, though what I am not sure." Tamari made an effort to hide her obvious shock and her thoughts that they were going to betray Konoha in a few weeks. "And what of my brother?" "Which one?" "Konkaru," she said, suddenly losing her composure. "He is 1 year younger than you, and carries a puppet on his back that he calls Karasu. From what I've observed of his posture and outfit, he has scrolls stashed away somewhere, presumably to summon more puppets. I've also assumed from observation that he is a skilled puppeteer, though I can't be sure until I've seen him in action. He fears a sibling as well, but that fear, unlike yours, is tinged with hatred and jealousy." She had Temari's full attention. "And Gara?" "Gara," Hinata uttered slowly. I see a lonely boy whose mind has been corrupted by a demon. A powerless boy in a situation beyond his control. A jinchuriki." The older girl was utterly stunned. No one had ever mentioned Gara in that manner, as if it weren't his fault. He was always at fault. Hinata whispered, "Are you aware of the power of human sacrifice?" For the rest of their shift, Tamari remained silent. Enko's smile had vanished entirely, replaced by a thoughtful expression. She had to go say something like that when she felt like she was finally beginning to get the girl. Giggling like a schoolgirl, Kakashi eagerly turned the pages of his orange-covered book. Baki gave an eye roll. Since the last ninja battle, the quality of Leaf Junin had actually decreased. After the Yondaime were killed, they suffered yet another setback at the hands of an idiot who was too old for his position. With Otogakure and Orochimaru on board, their invasion would surely be successful. Here comes the legendary copycat Kakashi. Baki of Sungakure no Sato, whose surname is unknown, may have been dropped on purpose on page 50.2 of the Konoha Bingo book. Focused on wind-based attacks and taijutsu. The Yondaime Kage's siblings and Sabaku no Gara were among the wards. A list of fundamental statistics regarding his gen, nin, and taijutsu abilities as well as some of his compiled attacks came next. Kakashi smiled. Kurenai had come up with a really clever idea. The following morning was cold and bright. Tamari was visibly quiet. Baki appeared even more contemptuous than he had been the day before, probably because Kakashi had appeared to be a bit of a worthless pervert during their shift. Enko was in a rare state of quiet distraction. Sasuke was avoiding Naruto in an attempt to avoid any awkward questions the blonde might have thought of, and Naruto was in a similar state, thinking back on Sasuke's remarks from the previous evening. Gara, Konkaru, Kakashi, and Hinata appeared to be largely unchanged from the previous day, as did the other half of their team. As it turned out, the mission's goal was to stroll along Kusa and Suna's border and ensure that nothing odd was going on. This fact was interpreted by Naruto as roughly a week of utterly uncomfortable boredom. This mission was a complete failure. He nearly wished that Tazuna had escaped discovery so he could have gone to Wave Country and engaged in combat with actual foes. The first day went without incident. It was the same on the second day. Day 3, Day 4, and Day 5 were all the same. Naruto was in danger of dying. What time was it going to happen? His wish came true on the 6th day. They were ambushed as their walk of the day was coming to a close. Right in front of them, 20 shinobi from an unidentified village had emerged from the earth. They all had a somewhat raggedy appearance, suggesting that they might be mercenary ninjas. The leader was barely a foot away from Hinata, who had been taking point. "Excellent," he said caustically. "We'll just be taking the girl and leaving, then." Hinata was too quick for him to grab her. He was momentarily paralyzed as a number of senbon flew from her hand to various parts of his body. With a strangled grunt, he collapsed to the ground. Enko called out, Nice hit, Hinata. Chan, dibs on next one. The man nearest Hinata yelled, "You little brat, look what you've done to our leader." With a slight smirk, Hinata remarked, "If I've done that to your leader, imagine what we'll do to the rest of you." Hinata was examined by Naruto. On the battlefield, she was someone completely different. All of the ghostly smiles and staring into space had vanished. She seemed to flourish here because she was self-assured. He could tell by her posture that she had done this a lot before. Her hand was comfortably by her side, next to a secret pocket in her tunic that contained more of her favorite weapon, Senbon. However, there was a strange quality about her. Hinata's shoulder twitched slightly as if in response to his thoughts, and she reached up to scratch something hidden on her neck, beneath all of her layers. Craning his neck, Kakashi yelled, "Naruto! Pay attention," in anger. He glared at him and concentrated. Later, he would figure it out. The earth beneath them trembled menacingly. Once more, Hinata was too quick to catch the hand that emerged from the ground next to her ankle. "They're underneath us," Kankuro declared. "Thank you, Captain Obvious," Temari snapped back bitterly. She was becoming anxious. He went on, "Just like the sandworms, nevertheless." Kakashi asked courteously, "Sandworms, they live in tunnels they make under the desert, correct?" He made his feet more sensitive by transferring chakra to them. He would sense any vibrations if there were any. His example was followed by Anko, Baki, Kankuro, Sasuke, and Temari. Hinata's near. Dance's agile dancing feet diverted Naruto's attention too much for him to concentrate, especially given his chakra reserves. Gaara simply didn't give a damn. "Yes, there are also similar species in grass country that are more adapted to the ground here," Baki replied. "It would appear these ninja have created a technique that imitates the worms." Hinata leapt once more. For some reason, she was the target of their attackers. To avoid drawing attention to herself, Anko whispered to Kakashi, "Should we split up to prevent such a big target? If we do, we run the risk of being picked off one by one. Should we break into small groups, then?" Kakashi looked at Baki, who shook his head and said, "Right." He stated, "We'll have our own plan," in a chilly manner. Kakashi let out a frustrated sigh. "Whatever. Anko, get Hinata. Boys, pair off. I'll be fine on my own. Now scatter and take them out a ninja at a time. Remember, we've got the quality over quantity advantage." Sasuke and Naruto hurried to the closest ninja right away, a man with a nasty scar through his lower lip. He gave them a mean smile. He started to say, "You little boys don't stand a snowball's chance," but Naruto's fist to his face interrupted him. The punch knocked him clean out, and he went down hard and didn't get up. "I'll watch from above, you pay attention to below," Naruto angrily yelled at his teammate. "I haven't got the control right now to do both." "Right." As directed by Kakashi, they dodged and swerved in and out of the invaders, eliminating each one individually. Within minutes, their combined abilities eliminated 5 more ninja. As Naruto began training another shinobi, Sasuke turned around for a moment to see what the Sand team was doing to address this issue. He clenched his jaw in rage as he watched Gaara use a sand platform to simply raise each one a little off the ground. Attacks from the bottom could not surprise them because of the hardened base. Gaara also deflected weapons from striking them with his sand. Sasuke bitterly questioned whether Baki, Temari, or Kankuro actually possessed ninja skills or if Gaara simply took care of everything for them. He saw Kankuro's mouth say, "Kugetsu no Jutsu," as he sent Karasu, his eerie puppet, out into the field. After controlling its movement with chakra strings, he quickly cleared a 10-meter radius around his group. The 20 original ninja who had attacked them were all dead, but like a mad game of whack-a-mole, new ones kept appearing from all over the place. All right, Kankuro did well, however, Baki and Temari. With the exclamation, "Daikamaitachi no Jutsu," Temari pulled out her fan and paved a way ahead of her brother. Sasuke could feel the strong wind whipping past his ears, but he was spared the same fate as the enemies nearby. She had incredible control. Baki was the weak link, then, isn't it? No, compared to Naruto, he was not quite as dumb. By allowing his students to try things out for themselves, the Junin was clearly holding back. Most likely, the Kazekage had ordered him to do this. Sasuke also observed that Temari and Kankuro made sure to draw as little blood as possible in spite of their vicious attacks. He dismissed the fact that they didn't seem to care. Naruto hissed at him, "Uke. Teme, watch what you're doing," as a second ninja materialized from beneath the earth, just a single step away from the 2 Konoha Genin. A little warning would have been useful. Sasuke diverted the unexpected opponent with a flurry of two kunai, allowing Naruto to leap up and quickly knock him out at the neck. He was so furious that he turned on Naruto. Uke. Teme? In the midst of combat, Naruto was accustomed to this kind of banter and grinned devilishly. That's what I said, isn't it? The Avenger ground out. Remember that when I have a moment, I'll pound your face into the ground. Sure, keep on talking. In the meantime, Hinata and Anko were also easily defeating the enemy, which was fortunate because Hinata was their main target. Hinata would poke a needle at a pressure point, typically the neck, to help the opponent relax after Anko had first caught him with a painful kick or punch. 10 shinobis suddenly appeared all around them. On one man's shirt, Hinata glimpsed the village hidden in the grass symbol. She whispered, "They're from Kusa," to Anko. Grimly, she nodded. "I thought so. Their fighting style is something I've seen in other Kusagakure ninja." "You're not as slow as you look," one man sneered. "Attack." This group was much more difficult to defeat than the others who had attacked them because they appeared to have received specialized training on how to cooperate. One of them took a feel and glared at her, but Anko choked back a growl. His smirk was quickly put out of his mouth by a crushing kick below the waist. Hinata's situation had slightly improved. They had numbers and experience on their side, but she was fast. When a senbon hail struck her left arm, she gasped. They were being thrown with such force that one of them got impaled in her thick, metallic bracelet. The bracelet developed a crack as a result of a stray kunai accidentally pushing it deeper. She fell. Each and every combatant on the battlefield turned to gaze at the enormous chakra explosion that came from such a small, frail-looking girl. Hinata let out a painful scream. Her coils, despite their size, were unable to cope with the excess chakra. Nobody started doing anything again. Everyone's focus was on Hinata's suffering. She continued to crumple until she was motionless. Anko angrily hissed, "Seneashu," assuming that whatever they had done was intentional. 10 snakes suddenly jumped up and landed on each opposing ninja's neck, tightening their grip and sinking their poisoned fangs in for good measure as she made a punching motion toward the enemy. Anko turned to her vulnerable student as soon as they were down, not just unconscious, but good and dead. She shifted the girl's body so that her face was facing up and said, "Hinata, can you hear me?" Hinata's face was red and she was groaning frantically. "Shit. She's burning up, Anko." She raised her head. She was directly in front of Kakashi. What happened? These bracelets of hers, one of them was damaged, and then she fell. "I don't know what the hell is going on," Anko yelled, frustrated that she was powerless to address the situation. Hinata suddenly became motionless. The fever went down almost at the same time. Kakashi spun around to protect the two women from any harm. "Try and help her. I've got your back." Anko placed her head against Hinata's chest. Initially, her heartbeat was frantic and irregular, but it eventually slowed to the steady rhythm she was so accustomed to. Their thumping, thumping, thumping. Hinata opened her eyes. Anko gave it a scowl. Her eye color seemed strange for some reason. It appeared to be glowing, as though it were fueled by a sinister fire. Its edge developed a dark purple ring, and something contaminated her chakra. Anko stepped back instinctively. Tiny black shapes that resembled clouds crept across Hinata's left cheek and slowly made their way to the opposite side of her face. She rose slowly, smirking cruelly, which was a far cry from her usual demeanor. "Fuck. Kakashi, she's been sealed. She's been touched by Orochimaru." Across the battlefield, Naruto heard his sensei yell, and he stopped in his tracks. What did it mean to her that it was sealed? Sealed? As though she had something sealed inside of her? Similar to a biju? Kyuubi would have known. No, it would have been similar to what happened with Gaara. However, the name Orochimaru sounded very familiar. He had heard it somewhere. Perhaps during his unexpected study binge. Naruto. What the hell? Sasuke, who was being attacked at the moment, was not pleased by his teammates' abrupt silence. For Kage's sake, they weren't on a playground, they were on a battlefield. Breaking out of his reverie, Naruto made a move to defeat the man who was attacking Sasuke. But the man he struck vanished in a cloud of smoke, and he had lost his precious few seconds of inaction. He was struck hard in the back and flew well beyond the bottle's boundaries. After 3 painful bounces on the ground, his body slid to an equally painful stop. Naruto heaved himself up slowly. His body was filled with a revitalizing red chakra, which he hardly noticed. "Ouch," he hissed angrily, his sky blue eyes tinted plum by the red that bled into them as he searched for the culprit. But he froze once more. The battlefield was being torn by another figure. He reasoned that if Hinata was capable of such viciousness, it might have been her. As he charged back in, Naruto thought grimly that she was having a great time doing what she was doing. Her violent behavior was truly out of character. Where he would have punched, she stabbed. Where he would have sprained her wrists, she snapped them with the relish of a natural killer. As he approached, he realized that was not Hinata. Naruto. What the hell? It seems that Sasuke needed his assistance to escape trouble every 30 seconds instead of avoiding it. Naruto shifted his focus from Hinata to Sasuke while muttering to himself. His fears subsided as he watched Kakashi and Enko approach Hinata. It would be handled by them. They could restore her normalcy. He used kunai to eliminate the man standing over Sasuke. After giving him a fierce look from the ground, the Avenger got up and wiped the blood from his mouth. Sasuke glared at him and asked, "Do you know what a team is?" Sasuke was the one who was frozen, staring at something over Naruto's shoulder. Two or more people working collectively to accomplish a goal, and right now we're failing that goal. So if you could please get your damn act together. You damn hypocrite. No, look, it appeared that everyone who wasn't Hinata had been abandoned by their rivals. Kakashi and Enko were two of the 20 or more shinobi that were currently racing toward her. That itself wasn't particularly odd. What had them staring was the fact that Hinata had fallen to the ground, leaking a strange, dark chakra in such thick, abundant quantities that it was visible. What is wrong with her? Sasuke asked without a sneer on his face or a haughty bite to his voice. He appeared to be genuinely concerned about something unrelated to himself. Naruto reflected, that was a first. Seeing that he remained silent, Sasuke grew impatient. So what should we do? Kakashi and Enko appeared to be killing the attackers with ease. Naruto uttered the words, "We could help," feeling completely worthless. Not on your life, brat. He felt something strike the back of his neck. Darkness was the next thing he noticed. Tamari was cold and in excruciating pain when she regained consciousness. Her wrists and ankles were chafed by heavy bracelets. The pounding in her head was excruciating. You're finally up. Konkaru?" she asked with bleary blinks. They were in an underground containment facility of some kind. She was with Baki and Konkaru in a tiny cell that hardly had enough space for them to be comfortable. It appeared as though they had both regained consciousness before her, she thought irritably. "Please, continue to be unconscious for as long as you like, it's not like our lives are in danger or anything." "Baka." She tried to strike him, but the chains were too short. "I have a smaller body mass than you do. If they use the same dose it'll be more potent on me. I thought you knew your way around poisons." All he did was snort and turn away. Baki said nothing. He didn't appear to be moving and appeared to be lost in thought. "Where's Gaara?" "No idea. I was surprised they got him down at all." "What? How?" "Gas. They knew they couldn't pierce skin with him, so they used an extremely potent paralyzing gas instead. We've got no clue where he is." "Fuck," swore Tamari. "We're in a great mess then, aren't we?" "Yeah, we're screwed," agrees Konkaru. They both looked at each other in embarrassment. They were aware of how much they had depended on Gaara. Although he didn't seem to mind, he was the one who did the majority of the work, even though it was mostly killing. They were now without their greatest advantage. Whoever was capturing them was most likely keeping Gaara as poisoned as possible without causing him to pass out. Naturally, that was assuming they were aware of the danger he posed while he slept. They remained in their cell for the following week. A few different people would bring food to their cell and take them to the toilet once a day. It was a little better than having holes in the floor, but it was still better than allowing their waste to accumulate in the cage. It seems that they were expected to maintain the highest level of cleanliness in their cell. After this week was over, Tamari had a late, bent thought. What about the Konoha team? Who the fuck cares? They're probably already dead and we would have killed them in a few months anyway. Konkaru. And what would you have done if one of them waltzed in here right now? He sneered and said, "Doesn't really matter now, does it? I'm sure the invasion will go through without us." "Without us, maybe, but not without Gaara," Tamari remarked somberly. "Father needs him enough." "Orochimaru needs him enough," Baki interrupted her. "Your father, I believe he's been under the control of the Habi Sanin for some time now. And you didn't see fit to tell us this? Are you crazy? What good would it have done, Tamari? Even if I told you or anybody else, Orochimaru, using your father, would have ordered us killed before we could do anything. Cage. Sama signed a contract with a devil, and now Sungekir no Sato must pay the consequences." My, that is an interesting story. The familiar voice made all three of the ninja in the cage freeze. Hinata emerged from the darkness. Only her black shirt, black pants, and mesh underbody remained, along with her gray tunic and sandals. Despite her somewhat battered appearance, she was grinning with great satisfaction. As she stalked around their cage like a predator circling prey, she said, "I knew something was wrong with you," in a voice that was almost purring. Even she noticed it. Did Anko notice, too? Was it really that clear? Temari slightly leaned forward to meet Hinata's gaze. She had a different eye. Her eye was dark purple, almost black, rather than the enigmatic, veiled white purple shade they had seen before. Her features also had a hint of malice that had not been there before. That is, aside from the final moments on the battlefield. "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone," she said lovingly as she observed their shocked expressions. Not even Hinata. Kankuru gave her an odd look. "You are?" Baki looked at the girl more intently and asked abruptly, "What is your name?" She grinned. She laughed as she concluded, "I guess you sand ninja aren't all completely stupid. I'm Akaseko, the better half." She performed a number of obviously exaggerated stretching exercises before settling down on her stomach on the floor in front of their cell. She looked like a girl at a sleepover, leaning her head on one palm and bouncing her legs back and forth carelessly. "It's so nice to stretch my legs," she exclaimed. "Ah, freedom is such a fickle thing. I thought once we were away from their clutches that I would get to spend more time on the outside, you see. But she wasn't having any of that. I've been trapped, away from everybody, for way too long. She even affiliated herself to a village without my permission. Can you believe that?" Baki, Temari, and Kankuru merely gazed. "And then she doesn't even bother to tell them about little old me," she remarked, feigning a tear. The nerve." Akaseko gripped her head and abruptly rolled into the fetal position, shocking the people inside the cage. "Oh dear, what will they say when they—" "Damn it," she snarled and whimpered, rolling on the floor repeatedly before slamming her head into one of the room's metal walls. She was motionless and breathing heavily for a moment before slowly getting to her feet. She was standing on the wall she had collided with, and her breath came in jagged pants. Her eye had returned to its usual state of guarded lavender when she turned back to face them. Hinata said softly, "I apologize if she caused you any trouble." She bowed, avoiding eye contact. Temari asked abruptly, "Do you remember anything she does?" When Hinata looked at her, it seemed as if her eyes were penetrating the blonde's soul. A long time went by. "No," she picked at the different locks on their cage without saying another word. Both sides remained silent, as though they thought the other knew more than they should. Their own prison was not far from the one that housed the Konoha ninja team. But the room was much larger, the equipment far more advanced, each one had its own cage and operating table, and they appeared sufficiently more battered than their Suna counterparts. Baki assumed in silence that the attacker was mainly targeting the Konoha team or perhaps had significant connections to Sungakure. Or both. As Hinata made her way to the closest cage, Temari inquired, "Is this where you were being held?" She gave a headshake. Sitting in it, the dark-haired boy from Uchiha was tending to a black eye and what appeared to be a dislocated shoulder. He gave the Suna girl a fierce glare. As she began to pick the padlock on his door, she merely rolled her eyes. She grinned and his glare turned into more of a pout. "I grew up with Gaara, honey, you're going to have to do a little better than that." Baki sighed and went to undo Kakashi's hair, which appeared to be the most intricate, while Kankuru, being the hormonal teen that he was, went to Anko's cage. He was also hardly conscious, as if he had been beaten to death by all the Konoha ninja. That was one of the drawbacks of having a representative, particularly one as well known as Kakashi's. You were well known. In front of Naruto's cage, Hinata stood. He was motionless and silent as he lay on the ground. His mouth was open, and drool poured onto the ground. Even though his body was undamaged, Hinata thought this was much worse. She hurried through his prison's locks and hurried inside. She was the first to release her target, even though the other three had begun earlier. Before he could fall, she grabbed his body and gently placed it on the cell floor. Fortunately, his eye appeared to be lucid. They actually gave off the impression of being completely furious. Naruto.san, blink if you can hear me and understand what I'm saying. He blinked. She thought she might have imagined the slight reduction in the anger in his eyes as she smiled. Did they only just drug you? Blink once for yes and twice for no. Twice he blinked. Several hours ago? He gave one blink. Do you think it will wear off soon? Again, he blinked. When Hinata heard a disturbance coming from another cell, she briefly averted her eyes from Naruto and said, "Good. In the meantime, somebody will have to carry you." Ouch. What the hell was that for? Oh, sorry kid. Reflex action. Don't ever try waking me up again, got it? Cradling the left side of his jaw gingerly, Kankuru frowned at Anko. Despite having a slight limp on one leg and a bruised and swollen eye, she still went to Naruto's cell. "Hey, kiddos," she exclaimed, beaming. "How the hell do you get out, Hinata-chan?" "Stupid guard," she shrugged. She said. She didn't go into further detail. "Should I look at your ankle? I don't know what you can do for it, but sure." As Hinata leaned down to examine the damage, Anko looked around Naruto's cell. The angry look in his eyes made her smirk. "A little too young to be drooling quite yet, aren't you?" she asked. As he approached their cell, Sasuke chuckled and asked, "Should we get you some adult diapers too?" "Shut up, Uchiha." The only reason he got such a big dose was because he needed that much to keep him down. "How much did they give you?" Naruto had to acknowledge Anko. Even the adorable Uchiha brat didn't get any breaks from her. The exception was Hinata, but neither he nor Sasuke appeared to mind too much. As the familiar warmth flooded her ankle, Anko looked at her charge in surprise and asked, "Ah, Hinata, is that a healing jutsu?" Anko sighed and turned away as the girl blinked up at her without saying anything. Each time she believed she had delved a bit further. Kakashi was the last to stutter to Naruto's cell. He picked the boy up and laid him on his back after he had laughed at Naruto's expense. "Careful, it drools. Leave the kid alone, Anko." "Hinata, do you have enough chakra for another healing jutsu?" The child nodded. "Good. Would you take a look at my shoulder?" There was a flurry of quiet activity for the next 5 minutes. While Anko and Kakashi provided themselves and their students with basic first aid, Hinata healed as much as he could without overburdening herself. The Suna team silently stood off to the side, doing little to assist or obstruct. Hinata used the occasion to share her anxieties with her teachers. Hinata, who was bandaging Sasuke's arm, said, "They're hiding something from us," without raising her gaze. "They're planning something." Sasuke grimaced and leaned back against Naruto's cell bars, asking, "What makes you say that?" Tamari caused his pride to ache along with the rest of his body. "Body language when I or somebody else said something." "Now you're hiding something," Kakashi said softly. "Can't have that." Anko broke off their conversation when she noticed Tamari, Baki, and Konkaru approaching. "Explain later," she said. Anko turned to the Suna ninja and said bluntly, "Do any of you have ideas for getting out of this mess?" They all remained silent. "Do you have any idea who might be behind this?" Tamari said, "Aren't they Kusa shinobi? I saw it on some of their clothes," as though it were immediately apparent. Anko gave her a chilly smile. When Konkaru snickered, the girl spluttered angrily, "I'm guessing your brothers are the brains in the family? If you were really paying attention, then you'd have realized that the Kusa thugs were only hired mercenaries. They may wear the Kusa symbol, but they're not working for Kusagakure, and they're not the masterminds. Somebody put them up to it, and that somebody is the person or organization who is running this facility." Tamari averted her gaze, frowning deeply. "Yeah, whatever." Anko sighed. "Anything else to add? Anything at all?" "Well, you three are a waste of time. Where's Gaara? Maybe he can be of use." "Let me assure you, Gaara-san, your team is not in any more discomfort than absolutely necessary." The oily, mannered man, a boy, actually, was grinning in what he must have interpreted as a disarming and somewhat pathetic way. As they conversed, Gaara's expression remained constant. "I couldn't care less. Okay, I was speaking with Orochimaru Sama, and the invasion should go along as planned. You will be briefed further as soon as we concoct a reasonable escape plan for." "I don't care. I don't care for anything but myself, and the chance to prove my existence. As long as that is provided to me, you need not worry about your life, Kabuto." "Thank you, Gaara-san. I think." The shinobi who had been captured had divided up to look into 2 potential escape routes. With Hinata's information, Anko had made the decision to stick with their original teams, even though she pretended that they were more familiar with each other's skills. Team Sand went to their left, and Team Alpha went to their right down the hallway. But now they had a problem. A massive door that blocked their path appeared to be made of titanium or maybe something even thicker and more resilient. All of their explosives were seized after they were apprehended, and the only way to legally get around it was to enter the right code on a tiny, black keypad, which they lacked. Naruto whispered, "Fan. Flipping. Tastic," to himself. It was fortunate, or perhaps unfortunate, that Naruto's sedatives had worn off after just a few minutes. Evidently, they had been giving him a lot of the substance ever since they discovered that the dosages they had given the others had, at most, temporarily numbing his extremities. Anko gave him a slap on the head. She snarled, "Keep a chipper attitude, maggot," although she didn't sound particularly cheerful. "If we get frustrated, it will only be harder to get out of here." How can I not be frustrated at this? If we don't get through this door, we'll likely be tortured and then killed. You want me to be chipper about that? I want for you to stop being such a negative influence. Guys, both Anko and Naruto yelled, "Shut up, Kakashi," together. Negative influence. Negative influence. Miss Suffering. Builds. Character, Miss Slave. Driver, Miss Blood. Is so delicious that I lick it off my. Kanai is talking to Uzumaki Naruto about being a negative influence? You're damn right I am. Guys, shut up, Kakashi. Sasuke yelled. Hinata's already in the ventilation ducts, in an attempt to stop further arguments. He believed that Anko and Naruto together were the harmful influence. He, Hinata, and Kakashi alone would make a decent team. Anko glanced up at the ceiling, where one of the vents had been forced open, and asked, "Shush." What? She could hear Hinata's clothing rustling against the duct's side if she listened closely. Oh. Thank you, Sasuke, for not being a negative influence. Unlike somebody else I know. Kakashi said, "Do not respond, Naruto," in a stern voice. And did either of you consider lowering your voices while we were trying to sneak through and escape from this facility? I thought as much, he added brutally, as they appeared embarrassed. That will only encourage her. Both of you need to grow up and get your act together, because we do not have the resources to put up a decent fight at this point. If we are discovered, we will likely die or be recaptured. So you shut up. Got it? Sasuke's gaze was fixed. Even on a mission, Kakashi had never before asserted authority. He didn't even show up for half of the D ranks they went on. In fact, he typically let Anko take the lead, even during training. From now on, you will do exactly as I say, and do it exactly when I tell you. Is that clear? Without glancing at one another, Anko and Naruto nodded. Good. Sasuke, you go and help Hinata. You're the only other one thin enough to fit through those ducts. Silently, Naruto sang, "Gotta maintain that girlish figure, Uchiha," as Sasuke passed by. Kakashi had no such qualms and struck him over the head, but Sasuke ignored him with more grace than he believed. Did I mention you were to do this with as little talking as possible? Hinata had found a vent on the opposite side of the door and slipped through it in a matter of minutes. The easy part was that. Determining how to open the door was the challenging part. From the outside, it appeared that entry required only a keycard from any employee. Unfortunately, she had seen this design before. It was done to entice people who believed that breaking into the lab was simple. After successfully overcoming the weak security and reaching the center of everything, they would try to return the way they came, only to discover that they had forgotten the password. Additionally, each new door typically had a different password. Yes, she was very familiar with it. Too good. How many times had she witnessed helpless ninja wannabes become experimental subjects for a psychopath's pure entertainment? How many times had the sounds of his playtime kept her awake? How often, if she recalled correctly, which she did, had she dreamed of avoiding the doors that looked like these for so long? They were 18 child. Sized hands high, 10 child. Sized hands across, and 5 child. Sized hands thick. Familiar, aren't they? Holding a hand to her chest, Hinata spun around. Her feet led her backward almost on their own as her brain gradually processed what she was seeing. He shoved his glasses up his nose and grinned at her, who was so terrified of him. In the dim light of the subterranean stronghold, they gleamed. "Hello, Hinata. How we've missed you back home," exclaimed Yakushi Kabuto, grinning at her with such unsettling sincerity that she almost threw up straight away. He had obviously missed her. However, not in the manner that a rational person would ever desire to be missed. "How have you been holding up?" She made a number of wheezing, rasping sounds in panic. His benevolent grin expanded. "Well, then. Good to hear. However, we have been wondering when you would come home to us again. We've all rather missed you, and Akaseko too, of course." P. Sorry, I can't quite hear you. Please, Hinata said in a terrified, stifled voice. Please, leave me alone. She shouted the final line at the top of her lungs, wanting to warn her team that she was in serious trouble while also frightening him into a poor move. She spoke in a relatively quiet tone, so anything she said had to have some meaning. She hoped so. From his position in the vent, Sasuke had witnessed all of the events, including the odd exchange between Hinata and this innocuous, hardly post-adolescent man. She was terrified of him because she knew him. What could she do now, though? Sasuke didn't believe Hinata could compete with this man, despite the fact that she was strong for a genin. There was an undercurrent of power about him. This Kabuto put on a great front, so it was difficult to notice on a surface level. However, his chakra control was almost perfect as he extended his arm to somehow disable Hinata. What was Hinata doing? She was obviously outclassed, and she was well aware of it. What was she trying to say? He could only watch as she suffered harm. It wouldn't work. However, it's unlikely that they could defeat him even if they used Kakashi's cherished teamwork. In less than a few seconds, all of these ideas were racing through Sasuke's mind when he suddenly had an odd thought. How would Naruto respond? Watching his teammate struggle for her life in this vent is not what Naruto would be doing. He would already be down there in the hopes of distracting Kabuto and engrossing him fully while Hinata healed. He wouldn't be wandering up here. Kaden, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Kakashi, Anko, and Naruto stood silently. Both the student and the company teacher were completely calm and didn't even fidget because they didn't want to aggravate Kakashi anymore. He had also helped them both understand a legitimate point. They should avoid creating noise and drawing the enemy's attention while they were confined in a closed facility. Both of them had completely failed at this basic ninja principle. Thus, neither of them uttered a sound even when Hinata was shouting. All they could do was look to Kakashi for guidance. They heard the sounds of a battle breaking out in the background, followed shortly after by Sasuke performing the Great Fireball technique, which is his signature clan jutsu. "I'm lost," Kakashi said in a very low voice. "There's no way to get through that door that I can figure, and Naruto's not small enough to go through the vent." "I'm not," the blonde boy acknowledged. He crossed his fingers in a seal that his teachers had grown very familiar with, saying, "But I can make someone who can be Kage Bushin no Jutsu." Unlike the usual masses that accompanied Naruto's completion of the A-rank jutsu, there was only one clone present. "Yo," the clone said, gesturing. Naruto gave the clone the command, "Transform into something small and slip through that vent. Sasuke and Hinata are fighting somebody over there." "Yes sir." The clone vanished with a soft puff of smoke, and a tiny bird took its place, flying into the vent and vanishing. "Naruto," Kakashi inquired cautiously, "are your clones capable of self-defense?" Naruto shrugged and said, "Yeah, sure, can't everybody's?" Kakashi did not inform him that the shadow clones of all people were incapable of performing their own jutsu. That kind of skill required either very fine chakra control, which he knew Naruto lacked, or he was still figuring out what the other requirement was, since typically a skill like that couldn't be performed without the previously mentioned very fine chakra control. And you know that the memories of a Kage Bushin are transmitted to the user once the Bushin is dispelled, correct? Right. They heard the words, Bushin no Jutsu, reverberating back toward them through the ventilation ducts. Anko angrily hissed, still being careful not to raise her voice, "I thought you couldn't do Bushin," towards him. "I can't," he stated. "But the Kage Bushin has the correct amount of chakra, like a normal human does, not like me. And so they're able to do more jutsu that need skill as opposed to power," Naruto clarified easily. As if they had never seen him before, Kakashi and Anko were staring at him. Did he actually know so much about how these things operated? Something about that skill reminded me of the Yondaime. The ability to dissect things into smaller, more manageable parts and then reassemble them in a way that is more effective than the original. "Good work," Kakashi remarked, trying to contain his astonishment and impressed air to prevent Naruto's ego from growing. He frowned and said, "My shadow clone was just dispelled, that means the clones he made will also disappear." As Naruto called forth more clones and sent them through the vent, Anko frantically asked, "So what's happening?" "Sasuke and Hinata are fighting one man. He's several inches shorter than Kakashi, has gray hair tied back in a small ponytail, is wearing round glasses and a purple and white outfit," Naruto diligently reported. "It looks like he's using some technique called the chakra scalpel to try and disable them. Sasuke's left wrist is useless but Hinata seems relatively undamaged, and..." His teachers suspected that more clones were being dispelled when he paused for a moment. He gritted his teeth angrily and said, "I think Hinata knows this man. He's called her by name and speaks to her like they know each other. She's really afraid of him. Really badly afraid." Naruto, who was becoming noticeably agitated by the moment, called forth more clones and sent them through the vent once more. "He's good," he reluctantly acknowledged. "I don't think they're doing so well." "Well, shit," growled Anko. "What the hell are we supposed to do?" According to Sasuke's expert, they were losing the fight. They would also lose the war at this rate. He was unaware of the man's full potential, and each time the man made a reference to a past event, Hinata froze for a brief moment. In a ninja battle, a few seconds could kill you or a teammate, and the man's chakra scalpel had already rendered Sasuke's wrist useless. They were about to be defeated. Then Naruto showed up. He assumed that he was not technically Naruto. However, it was a Kage Bushin, and Naruto's Kage Bushin were very helpful, as Sasuke had been learning more and more. For example, they now gave him and Hinata a distraction to attack without worrying about endangering Naruto because it wasn't Naruto. Since he couldn't fit through the vents in this case, Naruto couldn't be the culprit, but he had given them a small clue a few days prior to the mission. A tiny burn hole on the right pocket of his Shadow Clone's jackets was the first thing he made. He had explained that the fabric of his clothes was resistant to that kind of damage, but normally this wouldn't be so telling, especially considering his love of explosions. Therefore, a hole like that could not have existed in his actual jacket. Only the three of them were aware, though. It was a helpful differentiation. Hinata had suffered because of Sasuke's moment of reflection. She jumped away from Kabuto and grabbed her elbow, stumbling backward to lean against the door while stifling a cry of pain. Kabuto smiled empathetically and remarked, "It appears that despite your brief stay in Konoha, your skills are still as I remember. You didn't even graze me. Really, it would be better for everybody if you just came with us. You're just useless for any other thing, my dear." She stammered as she said, "I wasn't trying to hurt you," and avoided meeting his eyes. She waved a tiny plastic card in front of the sensor. "I just wanted to get this keycard." With a loud hiss, the door opened, and Kakashi, Anko, and Naruto were through in a second. They were in front of Sasuke and Hinata, who were hurt. They weren't seriously hurt, which was indicative of how Kabuto had been playing with them.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.